Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special conversation. We're talking Bloodborne theories today, and I've drafted the experts. Lokey, you're back.
Yep. Nothing else to say, just yep.
Awesome. And SmoughTown, Jeff, you're here too.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Very pleased to be here.
It's
yeah, sorry.
It's yeah, like I said, good to have you. Good to have you. I just came home from work, so my brain is still a bit razzled. But I think that's the perfect way, to engage with Bloodborne theory talk.
Yeah.
Just a little
absolutely.
bit of insanity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want that sort of good state of delirium. Also, I forgot to get coffee before we started recording. So,
Are you not always delirious? Anyway, though.
Me? No, I'm always
Yeah.
super focused. What?
I feel like you're always in a state of delirium when I speak to you. Do you want to get a coffee?
No, man, it's good. I'll get a coffee when you have to answer the door. It's fine.
Shh, don't tell them that.
It's theater of the mind.
It'll be removed in post.
Yeah.
You may also there might be like a 2-minute section where you two guys are talking and people will just hear on my audio channel because I'm not cleaning this up. Just like, and then you just hear like a as the coffee makes it in the background. So I put out a call out to the community to give me some Bloodborne theories because I've wanted to do more with Bloodborne, talk more about Bloodborne, but I've said so much about it already. So this time it's you guys, you the viewer. Great start. So I wanted to get some things out of the way because a lot of the comments had to do with Charred Thermos and whether I watched those videos. I did not. So just, if you asked about that, I'm sorry. Just blanket no to all of those questions. The second one has to do with the connected universe theory. Jeff, I don't know what your take on this is.
Yeah, I've always been... look, I enjoy people having their own theories, and I don't want to, necessarily say don't have your own theories, but I've never really bought into it or enjoyed it. I've always distinctly had these universes very much disconnected. Little homages here and there. Absolutely. Connected figures, yeah. Reappearing figures, whatever. And reused assets, absolutely. But yeah, I'm not a big connected universe guy.
But the reused assets, have you ever considered that those are actually lore relevant?
Yes, I know. Well, it could be, and I could be wrong. I know people say, the fluted knight armor.
Listen, it's very important that the Cathedral of the Deep doors are used in Elden Ring for, every single building, okay?
Right,
along with all their graves, along with all their floor assets. Oh, yeah, and that one symbol from Archdragon Peak.
And the labyrinth was Boletaria.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it, but I don't buy into it, personally.
Nah.
All right, so, same perspective.
I didn't ask you. No.
I'm sorry.
No, but it's the same for you, Loki.
Yeah, so the problem I have with the idea that all of Miyazaki's games are part of one big connected universe is that it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the cosmologies for each games. Just because Dark Souls and Demon Souls both have quote-unquote souls doesn't mean those are the exact same things. There are very important nuance differences that are explicitly said in the games themselves that sort of firmly separate them as being completely disconnected from each other. And so any attempt to kind of connect them kind of just shows a very superficial understanding. So I generally assume that if you're not being serious, you're generally just memeing, because it'd be kind of cool if these games all happen to be connected. It's a cool, interesting thought exercise. But if you're actually serious about that, I would say turn back before it's too late.
So I enjoy it. I don't take it seriously, but I enjoy it. I think it's fun when people are first of all, because the more games they make, the more tortured the timeline has become, I've noticed. It used to be just you have Demon Souls, and you have the Age of Fog, and but then you get the Dark Souls. But then we got Bloodborne, and it's when does that... And then we get Sekiro and Elden Ring, and it's you can't map all of this stuff, guys. And this theory is becoming so stretched. And I love that.
I can't wait till we attach Armored Core 6 into this somehow.
Oh, totally. But I love the idea that, it's not, Demon Souls and Dark Souls and Bloodborne are the same universe. It's always like, and the next game is also a part of it. It just keeps expanding.
It's a never-ending Hydra.
Totally. But so that's my take on that. I guess we should also to get something out of the way. We talked briefly before we started recording about the idea of people bringing other sort of external media in to come to understand these games.
Right.
Yeah.
You want just to talk generally about that, more or less what I discussed before?
Talk generally about that, because I think we're all in agreement that we don't really do that, right?
Yeah, I'm sure Lokey will give the kind of a more educated and thorough version of what I'm essentially about to say. But I have definitely been guilty of it before, using my own perspective and education of understanding what has influenced certain aesthetics in the Souls universe, and then going beyond the aesthetics and trying to fit the story in game to match what is the aesthetic inspiration outside the game. And it's kind of a rabbit hole. You can really push yourself down the incorrect path as far as I'm concerned. And I'm saying, like I've said, I've definitely done it before, where you're forcing an outside influence into the story, when in fact you should just appreciate the influence and acknowledge there's maybe a slight aesthetic influence or a little bit of a story direction influence, but beyond that, every story that Miyazaki has told is its own story, self-contained within the universe, and you always need to keep that in mind when you're bringing in outside influences into a story. And that's something I'm definitely trying to do more now, and when I am talking about outside sources, I am acknowledging, this is a lip service inspiration, and that's really my perspective on it.
Yeah, I think I feel like this is happening less and less. I feel like back in 2017, 2018, you go on the Bloodborne-Wiki, it's a lot of like, Odin is invisible, and in Cthulhu, in Lovecraft, he writes here about a monster that's invisible. Is it the same monster? And it's like, well, no. One of these is like Wilbur Wheatley's like deformed monster brother. That's nothing to do with Odin. What is this?
Yeah, for sure.
Because so many of the themes in Bloodborne are used to be a lot less known, but that's definitely changed over the past few years.
Bold of you to assume I'm educated.
But it was mainly from you that you enlightened me on the kind of degree to which this can go on, and it made me self-reflect on my own work. So external sourcing is a whole article on my blog post, because again, for those that aren't aware, I do have my own blog where I basically talk on the website about my methodology and things like that, and that includes talking about external sourcing, and that's
drop the link, Logie.
Yep. Let me drop
that's
it right now for you.
That was it.
Plug it.
That was the drop.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay.
I meant tell the people.
I knew you meant Aesir. That was my sound effect of it appearing on your screen at that point.
Oh,
see,
okay.
And that's the text on the screen. I've done it for you. Sound effect, free of charge. Done.
Okay. Sorry, Logie. You have a page dedicated to external sourcing.
Yeah. Okay. So find me at LokiSouls.com. Shameless plug. There we go. As I was saying, though, the idea is that the outside material is obviously an influence and inspires the developers, right? I think we can all agree that everything in fiction and narrative is derivative. There's always something that is being inspired by something else, or draws on something from the culture or the society or the fiction or whatever the personal experience of the writer is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that is in that fictional source they're drawing upon is being used in the narrative, right? And an example we talked about before starting recording was, well, just because Gwyn is the king of the gods who uses lightning, he takes obvious inspiration from, say, Zeus or Thor. Let's say we all universally agree that is true. That doesn't mean everything in the myths of, say, Zeus or Thor or Odin or whoever is suddenly now also true. This doesn't mean now suddenly Gwyn is a serial philanderer who's like is the father of all the gods, and one of them actually came out of his head after he got bonked on it or something, right? Like, you don't suddenly feel that doesn't give you license now to start assuming that everything in those myths is necessarily true in the game. Now, it could be used. Maybe you could use that as a framework or a guiding point to some extent, but you'd have to be able to substantiate it within the actual game and find it to be self-supporting. So a lot of times I find that external sourcing is best used when you're trying to frame something for someone to help explain like a concept.
Yeah.
Versus say in say when you look at say a theory on Nito and you say that he's related to Hades, and you're now suddenly saying that, okay, well, Nito is also now like related to Hades, and he has all this wealth, obviously, because there's so many rich things in the earth, and that was also associated with Hades and Pluto and things like that. Like suddenly,
and he governed the river Styx, and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you see, actually, the catacombs there is actually the river of the dead, and souls are going down it now, and it's like suddenly, like you can just
I didn't know Hades.
Increasingly, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know Hades was associated with wealth.
I can't remember off the top of my head if that's strictly true, but you get the idea, right?
All of a sudden, I feel myself more attracted to him.
Of course you are. You just want a rich sugar daddy, we understand.
It's true. Rich sugar bone daddy. I got my coffee while you two were talking, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that.
How on earth? How did you do that?
He's magic.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very good, and it's very useful for understanding when you're writing these lore videos, and it's definitely, and I think, improved my writing since, I kind of got educated on that fact.
Well, yeah, because once you know it, you see it.
Once you see it, you start writing. You're like, yeah, I can't make this fit or whatever. It's natural to do it. It's natural to do it.
Yeah, it's natural to do it because you're more familiar with it. But that is definitely, I think, a huge problem with lore theories, not just in Souls, but I think in wider context, is that people feel the need to try to substantiate for their lack of understanding within the actual source material by looking elsewhere to something that they may be more familiar with and can more easily latch onto. And I think that is a huge misstep that hurts the discourse, because suddenly now we're going down these rabbit holes of all these things that aren't even in the actual game.
And you're right, though. Initially, it's a good tentpole to get into the lore and understand the framing of it.
Oh, totally.
But then you should leave it there at the aesthetic surface level. One way I've done it, maybe incorrectly in the past, is when I did my Radigan Marika stuff. I always relate them to the rebus and the alchemical elements to that, and there's definitely the aesthetics there, but there's definitely an argument to be made that I've gone a little bit too far down that rabbit hole, as much as I enjoyed doing it because I love talking about alchemy and stuff. But yeah, that's the type of thing that I reflect on.
There's a difference between, say, maybe that Radigan and Marika's relationship is inspired by, say, that alchemical history there, right? And saying that they literally are that,
saying they are
the exact same thing.
A literal rebus, yeah, definitely.
But the rebus could be used to help kind of not only understand their relationship with each other, right? Because you can kind of draw on that and say, okay, there's a connection there. You can kind of see like what the inspiration is, and maybe there's something there in the cosmology that if we do our own investigation into it, we could kind of start seeing how maybe there's something more to it. But it isn't like good, like as a default, to just say, okay, this is just this. Yeah. Especially when you don't have anything in the game to substantiate it or really fit it in there when there's like an absence of evidence.
Totally. I also think that this is kind of like I don't think it's a problem. I think people are allowed to, obviously you're allowed to theorize and approach the game however you like. But it is sort of the Silent Hill problem of, because they're using so much Western imagery, like, Gwyn looks like Zeus. And like Marika, she's like impaled to the side, like Jesus on the cross. And it's like, just because they're using all of this imagery, your head immediately goes to, oh, I know that imagery, therefore this is the idea. But it's like, no, this is like, oftentimes it's actually just the imagery. It's like how Hellsing, I think the writer of Hellsing, the manga, came out and was like, yeah, I don't know what any of like this Christ stuff is. I just like the imagery.
I know that's true in like Evangelion's the one I heard.
Oh, maybe it was Evangelion.
Yeah. Because Evangelion uses the same thing. It uses a lot of crosses, and there's a lot of reference to biblical stuff and things like this. And people have created these long, complicated webs of all the inspirations and how deep the storyline is. And there's something to say about the depth of Evangelion storytelling. But when it comes to just sort of like the imagery and stuff, like I know the director or writer had just gone on the record to say that it's superficial imagery from a bunch of Japanese people who aren't really too familiar with Western Christianity that much, and they think it's just it's neat, it's cool, it looks nice, so we put it in there. We don't really understand it or are using it to tell some really deep, meaningful like philosophy there.
Yeah, and bring it back to Bloodborne. I do think that obviously that's why you asked in the first place. It probably was the most pertinent, this topic, to Bloodborne at a certain stage, where we were applying H.P. Lovecraft's work almost like directly in the early days, of course. Like you say, it's evolved a long time since then. But yeah, beyond the fact that it's about cosmic horrors, and some aesthetic, attention to certain stories, like with the fishing Hamlet and stuff like that. That should stay at the door, because Bloodborne really does have its own deep mythology that is more or less divorced.
Same with the Christian imagery stuff too. Also, right? Like you see a lot of the aesthetics in the game, and obviously it's based on Victorian London and things like that. And there's a lot of Gothic Christian cathedrals and things that are in there, and obviously the whole practice with the communion and stuff. Like there's tons of you could argue Catholic practices and imagery used in Bloodborne.
Yeah,
but obviously
like the vicars and blood rituals and such. But
it's not Catholic,
blood rituals.
Right? Like, speaking as a Catholic, I don't
Catholics famous for their blood rituals.
Our blood rituals where we all turn into beasts, yes.
Oh, I was obviously going to a different church from you growing up.
All right, so that's not to take anybody's fun away. If you like your connected universe, yeah, man, go for it. If you like to bring in external media, if you can connect to the game better that way, go for it. But this is just how we are going to approach this conversation. So,
well, Miyazaki certainly doesn't care, so why should we, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He's fine with whatever conclusions you come up. If you don't get his story, he doesn't care. It's a win-win for him.
It's your own story and your own interpretation. Yeah. And again, to be clear, I love approaching it with outside sources. I've just tried to remove it slightly from my videos that I'm presenting to people.
I thought you were going to say, when you said it's your own interpretation, Miyazaki saying that, I thought you were going to say, it's your own fault if you don't understand.
Yeah, it's your own fault. Just read a book. God. No, to be clear, I'm absolutely not, wanting to say people can't do that, because I do it all the time. It's just that when I'm trying to discuss lore in a public space, I am trying to remove it. I know I've been guilty of it in the past, but I am trying to remove it from my conversations, for sure. Yeah,
there's a difference between say having fun or just coming up with our own ideas, and then trying to have a shared discussion about quote unquote the truth, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, are we ready to get started?
Oh, yeah, are we not recording yet?
Oh, we're not recording? Okay, good. Let me just stop and restart it.
I'm good.
What a funny bunch of jokes those were, huh? Ha ha. Anyways, so it's roughly 20 theories. Some are just goofs, some are quick, some are more detailed. Let's see how we go. So the first theory is that nothing is bad in Bloodborne. England just looks like that. Now, Jeff, you live in England now.
Don't you? Don't you? No. Obviously, spent a lot of time in England, and I'm lucky to be alive. That's why my dad fled from England to Scotland when he was 18. Terrifying place. Spot on theory.
Painted blue on his face and everything. Started the rebellion.
It was brutal. Absolutely brutal, yeah. And that's why a lot of the hunters in Bloodborne are Scottish, because the outsiders are Scottish, because we're coming in, as usual, to solve the English problems. That's it.
Is that also true for Demon Souls? Is Allant Scottish? Because
and that's not me bringing outside sources in. That's just true. That's the truth of the game, okay? That's the truth of the game.
So that comment, that theory was by SmoughTown.
Again, not witness.
I always forget to write down people's names when I do these sort of videos, but I'll remember next time, I promise.
I also just want to say to my English brethren, just a joke. Half English. I'm half English myself. I'm just pulling your leg. Just pulling your leg.
How about you, Loki? Are you half English?
No.
Johnny English.
Nope. Johnny Loki English, you should know.
Oh.
No.
So the next theory is that the lone survivor class was someone who survived the fishing Hamlet massacre, as it states, lone survivor of a lost Hamlet, high life essence, and vicar.
Loki, you're from the fishing Hamlet. Why don't you tell us?
Yes, I am in fact a fish. My long lost brother is actually Godwin.
I was gonna ask you have translations, but okay. Because the phrase Hamlet, I wonder if that's the same term they use for fishing Hamlet.
Actually, yes, they actually do use the same term, which means village. So, so it's you have the fishing village, and then there's the idea that, so to like clarify, for the Japanese, when we talk about like classes, we're really talking about backgrounds, right? So that, like, the idea when you're picking a class in, like, say, Dark Souls or Bloodborne or whatever, is that you're actually picking, like, a backstory for your character, right? So it's not just that, like, you know, I'm a knight. You're a knight who has, like, you know, it's a different nuance when it's like, okay, I'm a knight versus, say, I'm a thief. Like, for example, in Dark Souls, when you're a thief, you're not just a thief, you're a penitent thief, right? The idea is that you have a guilty conscience, you've had, like, a certain past that you're kind of regretful about for being a thief, so you have more faith as a result in your quote-unquote class stats, right? And sort of the similar idea here in Bloodborne, where they're like, okay, like, the player starts from, like, the same, like, starting point, because we all get amnesia or whatever. So the idea of, like, classes and stats or whatever is focused around purely what your early life was like, right? Like, so, where did you come from? Did you come from, like, elite circles in academia or nobility, or did you come from, like, a terrible childhood, or was it, like, just this average, normal milquetoast upbringing or whatever, right? And so for the lone survivor, the idea is, like, well, one, it's not called the lone survivor, it's called, a village survivor, but again, like, it doesn't matter. The point is that the description tells us that, yeah, you were the survivor of a destroyed village. The power to live and vitality is high. Now, so, like, the localization translates this as life essence, but the power to live is used in several places. And generally, it's used association with, like, the various abilities that you can use as a hunter to, like, regain HP and things like that sort of thing. And we see this reflected in the next part where it talks about, like, your vitality stat and stuff, like, or do they call it vigor? Vigor in it's vigor in for the English localization, but the idea is, like, okay, you have a lot of, like, quote unquote, like, life power that lets you be able to live longer, and that's supposed to reflect your very specific circumstances where you were someone who, against all the odds, your village was destroyed for some mysterious reason, and thankfully you were able to get out of that thing alive somehow. And that experience, because Dark Souls, Bloodborne, like all these games sort of work off a very experiential level to its magic systems, that emotional experience you went through pushed the power of your blood to make it where you have more you're able to take more damage and survive more things because of that desperation to want to live that lets you get out of that circumstance with your village, right? It also has other effects on your stats, though I can't remember them off the top of my head. But the idea then, okay, so maybe the specific village that you left was actually the fishing hamlet that we went through. Now, there's several problems with this theory. One, our character is not a fish.
That is true. I was going to point that out.
That would be amazing. That would be an amazing character.
That would be amazing if we could. But yeah, our character is not a fish. And that's
Elden Ring would have given us that. Elden Ring has, like, a lot of those sorts of weird customization eye transformations and such. They'd have done it so that you have, like, gills on your neck or something.
Demon Souls remake, you could become, like, a freaking, like, Doom boss or something with, like, some of their customization options, like some of the eyes and stuff. But yeah, the idea
Bloodborne
with
just lets you be Samuel L. Jackson and and the old guy from Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Eustace, yeah.
Eustace, yeah.
And then, but yeah, so, like, the problem with the fishing hamlet, like, connection is that, like, one is that the fishing hamlet incident may be potentially too recent for our character, depending on how old or young you want to make your character. But like, there's also the issue of, okay, so let's say that you were living in the fishing hamlet. Okay, one, you'd have to go through your whole life without ever consuming any of the frickin' kin that are being farmed out of the fishing hamlet for them to actually, eat and survive and subsist, right, with the whole connection with costs and stuff. On top of that, you're now someone who has apparently escaped, but you didn't escape to anywhere nearby. You escaped far into the west, away from Yharnam and everything and everyone else, right? And you again managed to do this without turning into a fish, after surviving this terrible incident from hunters and stuff. And then, for whatever reason, you decide you're going to come back to Yharnam, and then in search of this thing that's apparently completely unrelated with the blood and stuff, whatever. And you can argue maybe there's, like, an idea where your character secretly wanted revenge, and therefore that they have to go all the way here and try to figure out what the blood is and stop the hunts and everything that creates the hunters or whatever, right? Like, I guess you can go with that angle.
It does kind of grind against the whole conceit of the DLC of, like, the Fishing Hamlet Massacre being a mystery if your guy already knows it.
Well, you can argue that the amnesia thing sort of, like, wipes the floor clean. But the problem I have with it generally is just that you have this very specific scenario you're trying to create for what is a very general idea. Like, you can imagine in the world there's lots of villages in a Victorian-inspired setting that based on, like, Western Europe, where your character had a village that was destroyed. You managed to be the only one that got out of that, and then now you're like some random nobody who comes to Yharnam another day, right? Like you don't need to connect it to specifically the fishing hamlet in the Yharnam setting in order to like make that work. And it sort of goes against the idea of like you being able to role play like in a more general sense, because now we're trying to pigeonhole it. Like, could you? Sure, but it doesn't really work unless you're allowed to be a fish person, because that's sort of like kind of like integral to what makes the fishing hamlet stand out from like any other hamlet in the setting.
Also, like the time, is it not been a long time since the fishing hamlet massacre?
Well, that's what I said. Like, depending on how old or young you make your character,
true,
that it just doesn't work then.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't really make the argument. Okay, then maybe I'm a descendant, because then suddenly you're not the survivor of that village specifically, right? You're a descendant of someone. So like, it just doesn't really work. I think
you're right though. You're free to roleplay it. You could say you were smuggled out as an infant or something.
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah, you could try and make it work in that regard.
But then you don't have the explanation for why the character has the stat allocation, because the point
True.
is
Because you're supposed to have gone through it with the experience of actually experiencing the massacre.
And that experience is what gives you and that experience is what gives you that higher vigor, that desire to live so much that you have extra life power compared to other classes or whatever in a relative degree. So again, it's just one of those things where it's like It's like a neat like idea to suggest, but I don't think it holds any water beyond that.
I think that a lot of this theory is really resting on the word Hamlet, and it's a background class that's like I kind of would have wanted this to be correct, because it's like, oh, that's kind of cool that they like baked this origin story into the character customization before they even did the DLC. Like that would have been kind of cool,
but maybe that. Maybe that was a conception they had when they had a rough idea of this Hamlet massacre before they went into the detail and made it all fish people and what have you. Do you know what I mean?
This is a truth statement though, because earlier in development, like a lot of the pre-release dialogue and stuff was about the idea that you were from a village or whatever that was destroyed by like a disease or something, and you were like the only survivor with that disease, and your disease was why you came to Yharnam to be cured. So there is that. So there is the idea that at one point they were going with a sort of lone survivor type story and tying it into the whole.
And there was a set background almost. Right,
for the character.
Yeah.
But they ended up dropping that, and now they made it this more general lone survivor background among many others you could possibly have, right? And the idea with the main character is that we are supposed to be someone with a shady past, right? Like, just no matter what our childhood was like, whether we were the lone survivor, we had a troubled childhood, we have a violent past, we're a military veteran, we have noble connections or whatever. In the end, the idea is that we're someone who is apparently evading the law. We have to wear this black hood in order to like duck around in the shadows and things like that, right? We're going to the middle of this eastern place where no one knows us, yet we're still trying to wear this hood and everything to kind of make sure that like, we can't be possibly tracked, because as we know, even the western constables and stuff might come all the way to the town or whatever, as we learn with the DLC and and Volter and stuff. So there is this idea that our character is supposed to be someone who, regardless of how we grew up, we end up in sort of a life of crime of some type, and then because we've learned or heard from someone about this pale blood, this mysterious pale blood, we have come to Yharnam. So originally this idea of, you need to come here with your disease, and you were going to meet your good friend Lawrence on the way there, and you and Lawrence were apparently this buddy-buddy, but then when you got your treatment, you ended up in a coma for like 2 months or whatever, and Lawrence eventually went out to basically try to find some way to help get you from your coma, and now you have to go and find Lawrence, and that was the original like plot idea for Bloodborne. And then obviously the name Lawrence moved on to like the main villain of the game, and like lots of stuff got moved around and things during development. So like the idea that we have any connection to the fishing hamlet or to the city of the setting of Yharnam in general just doesn't work. You could say the same thing with like Noble Scion and like Cainhurst or something, right?
I didn't realize by that story that we were going to be friends with Lawrence. I really don't like that story. I'm glad that they didn't do that. I definitely prefer the way they went with it.
Yeah, originally Lawrence was just some random nobody that you were going to do so, and you were going to be chasing after him, and there was probably going to be a big drama. It was probably, they did the similar thing with, like, Oscar in Dark Souls 1, right? Like, you were going to, like, have this, like, rapport with Oscar, and then it was going to be, like, you versus him, Dark Lord versus, like, Lord of Cinder or whatever, right? Like, this sort of dynamic they had. But then they it's clear that Miyazaki likes that idea of creating, like, a personal story with some character, and I think he attempted to do that again with Melina in Elden Ring, right? Having this companion who you're with and you can theoretically build a rapport with. I think that's Miyazaki trying to express that dynamic that he's been trying to do in his various games. I don't think he succeeded very well, but he tried.
Did you bring up Dark Souls 3 or did you say Dark Souls 1?
Dark Souls 1.
Okay, because I actually have a theory that the Soul of Cinder because we know Soul of Cinder used to be an NPC. I think, this is my theory, Soul of Cinder used to be that. He used to be an Oscar character. He used to be just a guy that like would teach you to make the bonfires, and you would just be like meeting him across the adventure, and then you like have him be the final boss. Well, maybe not the final boss because there's that whole, old King of the Eclipse or whatever. But I think that would have been the conceit of his character.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a similar idea, right? But the point is that Bloodborne clearly had a different idea that's more aligned with like what SmoughTown was talking about earlier, and like it's clear that changed, and like in the final game, it has nothing to do with like say our background or who we are in the past. It has to do with the idea that okay, someone we knew about Pale Blood, we learned about Pale Blood, we wrote down find the Pale Blood, complete the hunt. Like this is something we feel special about. I've talked about in say SinclairLore's podcast the idea that SinclairLore, shameless plug. But I've talked about in their podcast the idea that we seem to be someone who probably knew someone who did escape from the Yharnam setting and has like a connection there, and they knew about the Pale Blood and this whole thing, and they probably like we got caught up in like some criminal thing where you're being chased down the alleyways trying to duck and run out of cover, but our poor companion here, he got like shot or whatever, and he's dying or whatever, and his last breath is find this Pale Blood, go to Yharnam, find the Pale Blood, complete the hunt, blah blah blah, and then like we sort of make that our mission of we're again, this is going back to the idea of blood echoes and inheriting the wills of blood and things like that. We inherit our person's will to go over and complete this like final this last will, this last echo that they request of us, and then we go to Yharnam for that purpose, which is why we don't know anything, and we talk to the guy, and then because of all that, we end up getting amnesiac because of we took a very bad contract for treatment like an idiot.
I'm really glad they moved away from that. I'll be honest.
Yep.
I do not like the side of that. I really like you wake up and you find that note saying "Seek Pale Blood."
It's in your own handwriting and stuff. Yeah.
Utterly intriguing and great the way it is. I'm really glad they moved away from that.
Yeah, perfect.
Totally. I will say, Bloodborne, I think it would have benefited from having more NPCs for us to engage with, but I don't think the sort of central premise of you just finding yourself in the city with like the note there. I think that's better.
Yeah, I think that's sick. Yeah,
it's more. I think it's more thematically fitting too for a Lovecraftian story, right?
So good. Written in your own handwriting. You don't know why you've written it. You don't know what Pale Blood is. Tremendous.
You don't know.
Just tremendous stuff.
So, and you're basically forced to solve the mystery on your own now, because clearly when you were trying to do it before, it didn't work, and now you know even less than you did before. So, if you had any hints before about like what you could do or where you could go or whatever, well, now you definitely don't, and now you have to figure it all out. So like, it's a better premise, and I think it's a lot better than just saying, okay, well maybe you're from the fishing hamlet, maybe you're from Cainhurst, maybe you're from Yharnam, maybe you're from the Hunters or something like that. It's like, no, it's better if you're some disconnected person who maybe just knows someone who did, and that drew you over here for their reasons, not your own, and then you sort of make it your own story thanks to your memory loss.
All right. So the next theory is that, I don't know if this counts, but I really like the idea that the doll is actually a great one, and this whole thing has been about her getting a child. I don't think that's true, but I do think that's kind of a cool read.
I really enjoyed this one as well. And did you read some of the comments underneath it as well? There's one underneath that says, I 100% believe the doll is Erden's emissary, or whatever the Great One equivalent would be, a formless being at least partially inhabiting a lifeless doll to manipulate humans into doing its bidding is just so evocative to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it is an interesting idea. I like it.
That's very Lies of P.
Yeah, I mean, really, we can't disprove it, but nor can we prove it, and I'd say the evidence points a different way. But
because the fundamentals the fundamentals of the doll is that like she is a product of the hunter's dream, right? and she exists for the purpose of
she's
serving
the
the
attendant.
hunters in the dream. Yeah.
She's the attendant of the dream.
Yeah, you create the dream, and she's the medium with which you can draw upon the benefits of the dream, or at least the benefits that don't have to do with like chalice dungeon rituals and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Or repairing your weapon, or like all the the supernatural leveling up stuff, right?
Because the Hunter's Dream obviously gestated from the original Hunter's Workshop, where the doll was there as well, and it just so happened to be co-opted into this new realm, essentially.
So the argument would then be that the spirit of Odin, or some entity related to Odin, like some kin, right, would be inserted into the doll and sort of co-opt that purpose.
Yeah, and is taking control of that element of the dream.
The problem is what we see with the doll is that the doll is very clearly based and is clearly
Very based.
Based.
Yeah, base doll gives
Based
me my level
doll,
ups.
Yeah.
Lets me shut her down with 0 insight, so I don't have to listen to her talk every time I want to level up.
Yeah. Damn. Brutal.
But very based. But but it's very clear that she's her soul, like her essence, is based on Maria, right?
Yes.
Like her traits, her aspects of her personality. If you go into like sort of the idea of who Maria was during her time,
And she recognizes I can't remember what it is. Is it a hair clip that you give her of Maria's?
the hairpin.
Actually, she doesn't recognize the hair clip itself.
It's the feeling or something, right?
The English uses the term for nostalgic.
Right,
If I recall
okay,
correctly, the Japanese is more so just that she's happy, and it's more so focused on the idea that she's happy she received a gift.
Okay.
But there is it's very clear the idea that you find it in the workshop. It's meant for someone with silver hair. It's very obvious that it was either it was a gift to Maria, whether or not it was actually gifted to her before her death or whatever, right? But it's very obvious that there's it's all of it ties back to like Maria. And this is even true in like the base game, so we can't even argue, well, maybe the DLC changed things, because the Japanese for the old hunter's bone, where you find, of course, the doll, the workshop, and obviously that's supposed to be the big, secret plot reveal there. They give you an achievement and everything for getting there, right? Is that you find the bone belonging to an old hunter, and the localization went with his, but the Japanese text actually doesn't include a pronoun there. It's intentionally vague. And so, and when you look at the surrounding context, it's very obvious that the bone is supposed to belong with whoever the doll is based on, and that person seems to have a Cainhurst connection and all this stuff, and that they were clearly very close to Gehrman, and that Gehrman clearly felt very strongly about that, because then he creates a doll based on her likeness and her clothes, like the creepy old man he is. So, like, all of this, all of it sort of tells us, even in just the base game, that there was supposed to be, like, some old hunter apprentice of Gehrman who had ties to Cainhurst, and that ties into other, like, big lore stuff that involved in the base game. And then, of course, the DLC basically, they made that a central... It also, they made it central to the teaser, right? Like, having, like, Maria in that chair is, like, the central motif for the marketing of that DLC. So, like, they knew what they were doing. Like, they knew that was the person
really
that everyone
common.
wanted to see.
This is really common with FromSoft, though. They have a general high-level piece of lore that they don't really spell out in the base game, and then they expand upon it in the DLC. It happened with Dark Souls and Artorias and his general story. That then changed a little bit, and I always think it's retroactively changed a little bit in Notorious of the Abyss. You can make it work, obviously, but I did feel it was slightly changed with his Abyss.
Oh no, with stuff. the obviously the cutscene with Sif and stuff wasn't originally planned.
Right, of course,
because there's ways to cheat it and make it not make sense outside of the fact that it's a game, right? But yeah, like, to go with, like, to even use the Dark Souls example, though, Miyazaki actually talks in an interview how basically he basically spoils the quest in an interview before the DLC was actually even greenlit. It was a cut quest line at the time where they had this entire thing about you going into the past and saving Dusk and all that stuff, but that ended up on the cutting room floor, so we never got to see this cut past version of Darkroot Garden and Ulasil where we would rescue Dusk. And my suspicion is that there was more focus on the Dark Wraiths in that one. And that probably got changed. I think there was a lot more focus there instead of it being sort of like this blaming. I think original, and again, this is my assumption, but I think based on like the existing assets, they were probably going to use Dark Wraiths for that and have them be more central to the plot. It would still tie into the same things about Ulasil and the history,
and that would match up with
like
his clashes when he hunted the Dark Wraiths, right?
That's
in the lore, but then it doesn't happen. But then you can just say,
No, he did hunt.
Yeah,
he did hunt the Dark Wraiths, but like it's not related to that specific incident in the DLC. They're retroactively blamed for it because of other lore reasons relating to Ulasil and what the gods want you to know and not know, etc. So like it works, but yeah, I think that
it works, but they
originally
rejigged it slightly, definitely.
Yeah, and you see this with like say like all the cut NPCs like the Sanctuary Guardian, what's his name, Chester, before when Chester was actually an enemy and not like an actual like specific NPC person. The chained enemy, Calamite, all these were cut enemies in the base game, and then in the DLC, they're all basically ancillary, right? Like Calamite has almost nothing to do with the DLC other than the fact that he's there, right? Like it's not like this big plot.
He's just
Calamite.
a dragon that is there at that time, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like and it's the same thing with the Sanctuary Guardian. Like you cut the Sanctuary Guardian, nothing of like super substance is lost from the core quest.
Yeah, you just need
like
Artorias and Manus, and the other two are just totally.
And Artorias was even Artorias was featured on the design works in the unused designs page. Like he was cut content at the time, and they revealed it. They just didn't slap his name on. But anyone looking at that and sees the sword and the shields and stuff, like that's obviously Artorias corrupted by the Abyss. So it's very clear.
Great sword, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very clear they already had that idea there, and then the DLC, they probably added Manus to act as like sort of this foil to create a central figure to represent all the stuff they were talking about with Ulasil, kind of like how Ring City serves that for a lot of Dark Souls 1 lore, sort of condense everything into this singular place and imagery that makes sense in the larger context, but obviously like that wasn't something that they're thinking that far ahead about necessarily. Yeah, like, it's not like you specifically had that place with all the stuff in there, right? It's something you expand on, and that's part of the writing process. And it's the same thing with Bloodborne and all of this, so
yeah, definitely. Yeah, sorry, that's why I distracted you with Dark Souls. Exactly the same, where they have the high level lore, and then they obviously slightly rejig it and explore it in a DLC. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, with with Maria and stuff. Like I'm sure like stuff about her fighting style and like some of aspects of her character weren't necessarily all fed out. It was probably like vague ideas, right? I think we can all agree with that.
I would contend that I actually think and I've changed my opinion on this over the years. I think they probably knew exactly who Maria was going to be, like even personality wise, when they before they released the DLC, because the fishing hamlet it borrows a lot of imagery from like the Hell Scrolls, and you have like the River Sai, which is like limbo and all that, and the idea
you also have just the Lovecraftian story of Innsmouth. Innsmouth? Shadows of Innsmouth, right?
Yeah, but with the sort of Buddhist themes, you have the idea that Maria and the hunter, the deer hunter, they both sort of managed to transcend their own existence. Maria doing it through the doll, and the hunter doing it by becoming a great one. Mm-hmm. So I think the way to make that sort of make sense is that Maria had this very different personality from the doll. Like she was able to leave that sort of more vicious personality, because when we meet her in the Astral Clock Tower, she's not at all like she's described by all of the patients. The patients describe a Maria that's a lot more like...
She is to some degree in that she's forced to fight us, but like when you see like say when she like she does when she tries to like lethal attack or whatever, it's treated almost like a mercy kill in many ways. Like she's very gentle with us compared to like most hunters. Like compared to us with her, like we just like violently like just like be like get on the floor.
Yeah, I keep visceral attacking her over and over again.
Right.
For sure.
She treats it like this almost like a medical procedure or whatever. Like she's trying to like make it like as painless as possible. So I don't think like Maria loses that personality. I think that's more so the influence of the nightmare itself, and she's the guardian of the core of the seedbed, if you will, as the Japanese likes to call it, of the nightmare. So so like
going back to the doll thing, my main I do like this theory. My main thing would be, if this was to be true, you'd need to get more of the doll directing us really to do something. She's very passive. She's
that's true.
One of the most passive leveling up NPCs in Souls, I would say, out of all of them.
Yeah, the only one that's even less is Melina.
Yeah, she's just an automaton, basically.
She's there to do her purpose.
Yeah, and she doesn't guide you. She just says, speak to Gehrman.
And in all her you know what? Now that you mention that, all her private moments are also very, very personally aligned with what we want and what we will. Like she doesn't necessarily like being alone and like being left there without anybody to talk to or spend any time with, right? But she still wishes us the best
Yeah.
when we finally awaken from the dream and we're free from being tied to this hunt, right? So.
Yeah. But
You know what they could have done if they wanted to canonize this ending? Give me an ending where we kill Gehrman and we kill the moon presence, and then the doll walks in and the doll is like, "You dumbass, you've given me all your blood echoes, and now I have the most blood."
yeah, and then she just turns into a big, I don't know, presence, I guess.
Eldritch monstrosity, all the doll pieces are
something-
disconnected,
yeah.
far apart, and there's
Yeah.
this evil monstrous tentacles between them. Or whatever.
Yeah, maybe this is the ending you get if you reach level 200. You've given her so much blood that you've actually sort of recreated Erden within her, and he sort of just becomes like this sort of the pus of man. It's just like this red goo that sort of just oozes out of the doll.
Well, that's another problem, is that she doesn't appeal to Odin at any point. She
Yeah,
appeals
that's
to
true.
she appeals to Flora, the moon presence, and and the remaining lingering fragments of wills of the hunters that came here in the past, whatever trace amounts of them still remain in the dream, right? So it's she doesn't ever appeal to some other entity that we can't identify other than Odin. So that becomes that's another huge stumbling block with that theory.
Definitely, and I've got zero problem with this theory, and you can't disprove it. But I would need a little more from her.
Yeah,
The problem is
She doesn't give
there's
us
nothing
anything.
substantiated.
She doesn't give us anything of her own will or desire. So that would be my main problem with it. I need something maybe a little more. Some of the other NPCs I could believe it in other games for sure, but in this one she is the most passive out of all of our guides. Out of every game.
Well, yeah. It's like saying that maybe Gwyn rode into the kiln of the first flame riding a pink unicorn. Sure, maybe. Sure, it's possible. It's theoretically
that's
there.
My
but
theory. How did you know?
Oh
Yeah.
wow! See, we're
Yeah.
just great minds.
No, but you can't disprove this one. But I would just need a little more from the doll. Is what I would say about it.
Could be.
So the next theory is that Gehrman is the Orphan of Kos. This one cropped up a few times. This comes from so the audio files they have for the Orphan of Kos are generic audio files they use a lot, and you can play Pizza Tower. I think you can play Five Nights at Freddy's. I think a lot of those same audio files are used there. But the Gehrman connection is the crying. I believe it's also it's the burial blade. It's the sort of general look of them. They're both sort of tall, lanky guys
Wiry,
with capes.
wiry
Wiry
fellas,
with capes.
Yeah, the opening cutscene clearly uses Gehrman's crying audio files he uses, and those private moments you find him in. So they're using the same audio files from there for that specific cutscene when he's staring at the moon and stuff.
And the orphan is clearly connected to Gehrman. It's maybe an anchoring point. It's like a curse that exists in the nightmare, anchoring him to it, because it when we kill it, he's kind of he finally finds some rest. I don't know if that's the Orphan of Kos though, or if that's just because we get rid of the curse and he's one of the old hunters, it just lets him rest a little bit.
I don't think you killing the Orphan of Kos changes the dialogue. I think you have to kill the black shadow that emerges afterwards. So I think it is the curse itself Yeah. Which again, the Orphan of Kos is at the center of said curse, right? True. And that's why it takes its form when it tries to remanifest from Kos's womb, right? It's the idea that you've killed the avatar, so that avatar that acts as a protective shell to that yoke of the nightmare, and now that yoke is regenerating itself from its origin point. In
And
the
Gehrman
womb.
can immediately feel that release when we've killed that.
Yeah, when we killed that shadow again, because that's that's when you get to it. It's the shadow thing, and we see that shadow with the hunters that are under the influence, right? Those unique hunter NPCs. When you kill them, you see the same shadow. I think even the Orphan, if I recall correctly, has some of that shadow appear during certain attacks and things, but I have to double check on that. I don't remember off the top of my head. So.
Yeah. They are clearly connected. The Orphan of Kos definitely takes some visual cues from Gehrman, but
So is the idea then, if he is the Orphan, that Gehrman the entire time that he was, essentially the father of hunters, he's actually a great one himself? Is that the idea?
As someone who actually agrees with this theory in the broadest strokes, I can add actually my 2 cents on that. So the idea with the dreams and nightmares is basically just to give the briefest of cosmology, is that the idea is that there are 2 ends of blood, right? There's the physical aspect and there's the mental / spiritual aspect, right?
Yes.
And then the physical aspect is what we would consider rooted in, time and space as we understand it, right? Like, the way that physicality works and things work. Like, you have one person existing at one time, and they go through, like, in a linear format, how they progress and age and things like that, and, like, all their memories and stuff, right? And then that is that one person. They are their own unique individual. But at the other end of Blood is that spiritual mental side, which is simultaneously recording all that stuff at every second of every moment, right? And when we're, like, creating, say, like, the Chalice dungeons or whatever, we're essentially creating simulations. The sort of simulations, I use that term, but it's like a parallel reality simulation, essentially, right? Like, it's as real can get as far as, reality is concerned in sort of metaphysics. But essentially, it is just you taking that sort of spiritual data, the soul data, you could say, and then using that to reconstruct something as its own parallel physical reality, and that is what a dream and a dream space is, right? And it operates under whatever the rules or whatever happens. That's why Great Ones are so powerful, is because
the
they
masters
have
of their own domain that they've created, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
essentially, they have they are at such a high level of thought and conception that their cognition allows them to understand how to construct and manipulate dreams, so they essentially are lucid dreaming, right? And that, again, builds on, like, Lovecraftian ideas, of course, but the idea is essentially that they are quote-unquote asleep, but they are also simultaneously awake as they dream, and that is what gives them so much control over, like, say, the dream spaces that they create, and obviously there comes with their own limitations, but, that's besides the point. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that there is a database, essentially, in this cosmology, this Akashic record, you could say, where everything in the universe has been recorded at every point in time. And so, at any point, you can take, say, the different, to go back to the doll example, you take all these, Flora wasn't able to recreate Maria, because Maria's soul, her complete soul, as she was at the end of her life or whatever, was taken by the ghost of Kos and trapped in the dream. And Flora is not able to then use and take that soul data. So it just takes aspects of that soul data from different points or different aspects of Maria, and then, like, composites that into a separate vessel, which is the doll, to create something like Maria, but isn't really Maria. But because it's sharing the same soul data, that's why the doll is able to feel when Maria is slain or whatever, and has this thing with, like, shackles and stuff like that. Because there are aspects of Maria which are taken, but not the complete thing due to how that all works. Same thing you could argue with Gehrman. It's not that the Orphan of Kos is Gehrman, because Gehrman is currently trapped and being held by Flora, right? But when when the Ghost of Kos creates the Orphan, in order to get the next best thing, it takes aspects and elements of Gehrman's soul data and combines that with the soul data of her own baby, and that creates the Orphan of Kos. This giant, admittedly, it's described as an old man, so there's the idea that it is this elder, right? Like, you have, like, the priest or whatever describing as this, how's the English describe it? I think it's, like, wizened baby or whatever.
Child,
yeah. And it's the same thing. It's aged, it's old, like, it's clearly supposed to be an old man. You can see similar nose to Gehrman and aspects of that. I use the same audio files. Again, people have made the comparison. And it comes to the deep lore idea that Gehrman is the one who confronted Kos on that beach, slew her, and then ripped the baby from her womb after killing her, and then took it with him back to Lawrence and company, right, while they're doing the massacre and all that. So, for Kos, what is the more perfect or fitting hell than to turn her into the eternally suffering baby, and make him have to suffer everything that her and her baby did, essentially, as well as simultaneously act as the guardian to protect this nightmare that's causing all the hunters that have sort of descended from him, right? Like, they're his apprentices, and his lineage of hunting and all that. So everything that stems from him, his legacy, is also being tormented or whatever, and he's the principal figure that is keeping that right. Like, so it's a very twisted sort of hell that the Ghost of Kos has created for all these various hunters that have particular blame in some area. Like, you can argue Maria maybe gets some mercy because she's not part of it, but her personal hell is she's not able to be with the patients who she really cares about and doesn't want them suffering, so she's just forced to stay there as the guardian of the seedbed to the dream with the fishing Hamlet. You have, of course, with Ludwig, and Ludwig, of course, basically being the source of the river of blood, and, like, endlessly hunting all these hunters or whatever, even as they rise again or whatever in this never-ending cycle of death and hunting and beasthood and blah blah blah, right? Like, so all this sort of ties together, kind of the idea that, like, yes, it's not necessarily that it is Gehrman, I would say, but it is using elements and aspects of Gehrman, and should Gehrman ever be free from the hunter's dream, then the actual soul of Gehrman, like, Ghost of Kos is stepping that up immediately. It's like, okay, Gehrman finally at the end of his life, whoop, now you can actually be my baby, right? Like, so that's how I would defend this theory, because I more or less agree with him, think it's true.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead, Aesir. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I need to get to making the Bloodborne Buddhist Hell video. I feel like that's a video that's poised to do really well, but somebody has to just go sit down and make it.
I think it'd be good. I think it'd be good, but I think algorithmically you'd have to word it correctly.
Yeah, you couldn't say.
You couldn't just say. I don't know. That'd be a difficult one, but I think it'd be a really good video, definitely.
Listen,
Bloodborne
bitches.
is hell.
yeah. Bloodborne is real hell.
Bloodborne is hell, and you bitches are going.
And you're
Advertisers
coming
gonna love
with me. No, I did a video on Kos years ago, and I've always agreed that the Orphan of Kos we fight, obviously, in the dream is not the Orphan of Kos in a literal sense. Definitely an avatar of the crimes that took place there in some shape or form. So I could definitely buy that an element of Gehrman's aspect got drawn into it. Definitely buy that. But I'm wondering if this comment is more literal.
Yeah, I mean,
it might be.
They capitalized the
that's what
is
I'm wondering.
in Gehrman is the Orphan of Kos.
Well, again, we can't talk to the person directly to get like their elaborate thoughts, but if they think that it is Gehrman, it is actually like just Gehrman, and like I don't know, the Gehrman we meet are like I don't know, like Gehrman is like on his off time playing as the baby. That I don't necessarily agree with. I think it's just they're connected.
That's how he looked once. That's how he looked once, and they've gussied him up. Yeah, gussied him up all the time. Yeah. No, but I definitely agree that it could be just an element of Gehrman that's stuck in there, stuck in that moment.
It's like taking pieces of different people's souls and like combining them together to create this quote unquote unique soul, but they're simultaneously still aspects of the same person. So like you could argue, for example, when Gehrman has his nightmares or whatever, he's actually having nightmares about the not just of Lawrence and Willem and stuff like that, but also he could be actually experiencing being the Orphan of Kos in his nightmares, because that's part of his soul there. So when he's dreaming within a dream, he's like actually in the other dream, essentially mentally, to some extent, right? And again, it goes back to my point about like the doll. Like the doll isn't Maria, but she feels the same thing that Maria felt when she was quote unquote freed from the nightmare, at the shackles coming off, right? And she's like, that's weird, I don't have shackles or anything like that, right? Because it's not her that's experiencing that, it's Maria, but they share enough aspects of their soul that it's sort of something that it's something that they both would experience simultaneously.
Yeah, without the doll necessarily having the memories to contextualize what she's feeling.
Yeah, and it's something that doesn't exist in our reality of the physical waking world, right? But within the dreamscapes, and there being like two dreams with two different souls, two different entities that are based on the quote-unquote soul of Maria to very different extents, then that is why it is possible to kind of like have that sort of thing, right? Like you're not going to have any instance like someone in the waking world would probably feel like what another character would necessarily feel. So it's like, again, it's a bit heady, but I think the simple way to think about it is that like Gehrman is the Orphan of Kos so far as pieces of him are being used as the building blocks, but it's not him in his totality.
All right. So the next theory, I actually disagree with this one, but it goes that Yharnam, specifically Cainhurst, has some kind of naval exploration culture based on Maria's outfit. Yharnam, specifically Cainhurst, Cainhurst is not a part of Yharnam. These are very... this is... Bloodborne kind of runs in the 15th, 16th century European city-state model. And the idea of like naval exploration culture, Yharnam is a mountainous city.
Yeah, it's supposed to be located...
Sorry, he's not saying... I was thinking about Temeru for some reason. I just went Queen Yharnam. I'm so confused. Right, so Yharnam has a naval exploration... Right, got you. I'm caught up. Yep. No worries, yep.
Yeah, and,
yes, Queen Yharnam. She really loved that naval exploration down there deep underground.
I was so confused as to where we're launching ships from down there.
Listen, you've been through those sewers. They're extensive.
They
can
times.
Consider... Just build a bunch of ships and you can just go through and hunt all the pigs or something.
Right, okay. Based on Maria's outfit, I just... Again, it could be possible, but there's just no huge amount of evidence to support it, is there, right?
Well, I think using the outfit as evidence is a bit silly, because it's not like that's like a pirate gear or whatever. Like the tricorn hat that she wears and stuff isn't just used in like naval shipping contexts.
Also,
like it's something that comes from that era.
the only like ships we see in the game are the sailing
The
ships
masts
in
the Nightmare Frontier. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have small
which I
little
would guess-
rowboats. Yeah, we have the
which I
small
would
little
guess is
rowboats in. Yeah, but also in the Yharnam sewer system.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. There's a little rowboat right at the bottom. Yeah, you're quite right. Yeah.
Well, the idea with like, so like the best way I can think about this to like justify it outside of like just Maria's outfit would be that Cainhurst has a lot of they've collected a lot of Eastern memorabilia and stuff like that. Like a lot of the weapons they use and adopted are clearly taken from like a Japan equivalent, right? Like not Japan as I like to call it. There's always a not Japan in these games, right?
It's a magical land of the reeds.
Yeah, the land
Loki.
of reeds. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Except in
'Cause
Sekiro,
it's
then it's just AU Japan.
world. It's the same world.
Yeah, clearly, it's all the same Far East, right?
Yeah.
Just have like a lawn and like the wolf meat, and everything will be fine. But yeah, so the best I could justify is like, okay, the idea would be, okay, they go out exploring and they go to places like the Far East or like some India equivalent or something, right? And they collect all this awesome Eastern stuff and then they bring it back to Cainhurst, right? And that's also where like they get all their wealth, I guess you could argue, for like them being like these rich, posh nobility and things like that. And like because of Cainhurst's proximity to Yharnam, then like sort of like through Hemwick and stuff like that. Okay, so like you have Yharnam and Hemwick and like Cainhurst, and there are all these like there are these independent, at least with Cainhurst, it's pseudo independent with the Hemwick situation, but basically you have these independent like towns and villages and like self-sufficient like communities, and then okay, so then they all sort of like work together as like sort of this like network, and in that respect then Yharnam has like this naval seafaring culture. But we, like you guys said, like you don't really see that in Yharnam itself. Like we don't really see a lot of professions of people who have like this strong connection to sailing or naval exploration. The closest we get is like some rowboats in the sewers that are obviously used to like fish out any trash or actual fish from the river water that's being used for the sewers, so they can survive there in that poor side of town.
Yeah. So
and then
I think So I don't think this theory I don't think Yharnam has.
Don't say. Oh, I knew you were going to say.
Anyways, the next theory is that can you talk about the theory surrounding the pillars in the Hunter's Dream?
Yeah, it's actually Ash Lake.
I see.
Yeah, we're actually adrift in Ash Lake.
I see.
That's
that's what's up there.
No, in a more generic sense, it's the same reason there's trees in the Erd Tree at the end of Elden Ring. It's just to convey the idea of this being an expansive, never-ending space. It's literally just a visual cue in my mind.
Because the idea is that
other worlds, whatever you want to say, but I think it's just it's literally just a visual indicator of where we are.
Because the Hunter's Dream itself is on one of those pillars, right? Like if you get like a larger sense, it's like essentially like atop them, and then you have these others. So like I guess if you want to go with like the I don't subscribe to this, of course, but if you want to go with like say the multiple like
Worlds,
multiple universes idea and stuff, and want to take that to that full extent, then you could argue like there are other Hunter's Dreams like this, and these are for the other players and stuff like that. But I would agree. I think it's more it's just a provocative image that is used to highlight the expansiveness of this Hunter's Dream, because ultimately the Hunter's Dream is irrelevant beyond the workshop and the confines that we actually explore. Everything else out there doesn't need to be anything. I guess you could argue thematically maybe there's some reason why Miyazaki and From Software want to use those like images, and if you want to argue they're like not just pillars but maybe like tree stumps or something to some extent, I guess you can make the case that with trees and branching and chaos and all that. But like I don't think there's anything like.
It's just
cosmic.
Like
anytime you go...
It's just cosmic, and I just think it's just a visual indicator of this is a cosmic, expansive world. I think it's the same with the Erd Tree at the end of Elden Ring, when you look at multiple versions, basically.
Yeah, well, at least with the Erd Tree, I think you can at least make some case that there may be some greater significance with like the Erd Tree or history, depending on your perspective on that. But like with Bloodborne specifically, I feel like any like idea you go down in there, it just inevitably hits a dead end because it doesn't tie back to relate to anything of importance outside of the multiple worlds theory. And I think Bloodborne is very clear even if you want to make that case in Dark Souls, Bloodborne is very clear that there is not like alternate universes and multiple worlds and things.
There's not parallel worlds, but there's the different planes of dreams that are created, right?
Yeah, there's like
it's a different system when it comes to these ideas of other worlds. Yeah,
like other worlds only exist in that there's parallel dimensions that are like, again, simulations, creations, copies based on
corruptions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like there's nothing here where it's like, okay, there's like these branching timeline of a multiverse or whatever, and therefore like, you know, your hunter and say another player's hunter are definitely from these like parallel universes, and that's why you can make choices. And like that I think goes too deep into the meta.
Same, and you're right, it doesn't mesh with what we know of Bloodborne's lore when there's other things.
Then you get weird things when like you summon what's his name? Not Gehrman, Gascoigne for to support you during like the early game, but then when you go into his boss fight, obviously you can't have Gascoigne summoned for the Gascoigne fight, so they automatically like despawn him and just immediately go there. And I don't think Gascoigne was even summonable at the start of the game. I think it was a later addition during a later update, right? So like, yeah, like it's very obvious that when they do these things, they're doing it with the idea that like, you know, these characters exist in one cohesive world, and like even more so than you could argue for the other games, that that it's all clearly one singular linear timeline that we're following.
Yeah, correct. I agree. I think in Bloodborne, you're right, it's definitely the most clear when we try to understand different planes of existence. And it's not multi-world. It's not multiverse, basically.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the next one is kind of long. But... Oh. Well, you know, that's fine. Frenzy is a result of being perceived by certain unseen beings unrelated to the source of frenzy, i.e. enemy attacks, enemy sidelines, and the bloodletter. Frenzy builds up when becoming visible to or communing with these beings, likely great ones, when in contact with the right materials, entities. Perhaps breathing deeply of giant pick breath or cuddling with Bergenworth buckboys is a good way of communing with the great ones. Bloodletter Frenzy proc might be a sort of devil's deal situation where you're drawing the power from some great one or another to boost your own. Insight reduces frenzy resistance because your own Elder's knowledge makes it easier for the outer gods to perceive you. A brain swollen with ice must be like a beacon.
So
I don't hate this.
Okay, so the thing with it is that, like, fundamentally, first off, just to clarify, when we're talking about frenzy, we're talking about madness, because the Japanese term for frenzy and madness, they're synonymous. Like, it's the same kanji, it's the same term. So, when we're talking about someone being in a blood frenzy, we're talking about your blood going mad. And the idea of madness and insight is, in fact, like, you know, they're intrinsically linked. The thing with frenzy, though, is I think it's overcomplicating it. I think it's not looking at the fundamental idea that your blood is a fundamental building block to this universe. It is the source of your soul, your will, and your that will and the wills that you collect from like blood echoes and stuff. Because again, I haven't clarified in this podcast, but when we're talking about echoes, we're talking about the last wills, the final wills, the dying wishes of the person. And it's the same thing with like when the doll levels us up. She talks about how she's leveling up our will. So the idea is that when you are your will is the key aspect, your emotion, your memories, your experiences, your willingness and desire to keep on living and things like that is sort of the key aspect of like what's going on with like all the stats and how they interact and things like that. So with frenzy, the general idea seems to be that you are agitating your blood or an outside force is agitating your blood. And therefore, that agitation causes a buildup, and when it hits a certain breaking point, that causes your blood to burst out of you, which obviously can lead to your death, you know, for hopefully self-evident reasons. The idea then that that there's a Great One communion on top of that, I feel is absolutely unnecessary then, because it's very simple of the idea, like, say bloodletter, you are stabbing yourself. You can argue, like, if there's some, like, eldritch mechanism behind it or whatever, but you are essentially stabbing yourself, causing your own blood to become agitated, and that ends up, or say the experience with, like, say, cosmic horrors and things, is causing your blood, along with your insight, to correlate. So, like, I don't know if the person meant the way they worded it, but I'm pretty sure, resistance directly inversely correlates to your insight. So if you have higher insight, you are more susceptible to frenzy, not less. I'm not sure if that was absolutely clear from the way they worded that.
I think they maybe got it backwards there. Yeah.
Insight reduces
one other
frenzy.
thing.
No. They say insight reduces frenzy resistance.
Oh, right. You're right.
Yeah, because,
you're
because
right,
you're like a beacon to the outer entities.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So, the idea there is simply the fact of when you are more attuned to the arcane, to the secrets of the gods, as it were, the divine mysteries that are all the powers of the cosmos and the mental spiritual aspect of blood that the great ones are privy to. You are therefore going to be more sensitive to that, which also means that your blood is going to be more sensitive to anything resulting from that. And because, as we know, when you are someone of this physical world that is having experience with that, yes, your insight goes up, but that also makes it much more easier for your blood to not be able to handle that, right? You go crazy, you overload, like you're not able to process this properly enough before you go insane. If you're lucky, you'll process it properly and you'll become a higher being like a great one, right? So, like, I think it's overcomplicating a simple idea of just like it's a simpler, like, more mundane mechanism within the confines of this fantasy world.
I've never got too deep into frenzy, but you're right. I'm fried looking at this comment. I think the easiest way of actually looking at it is the pigs, because he mentions the pigs, right?
Yeah.
And pigs are kind of like rats in some of the other Souls games, where they're like scavengers in this world, right? So they're ingesting a lot of
pigs eat
blood.
anything, right? So.
Yeah, they're ingesting a lot of this eldritch blood, and so when they're breathing on you, that is why it's causing frenzy, right? Because they're exhaling.
Do they cause frenzy? I think it just causes poison. Am I crazy? Or
breathing I think the ones in the Mensis dream, don't they?
Well, the Mensis dream have also had giant eyes grafted onto them, though. So, like,
is that not how your pigs look?
Oh no! Not when they have 5 of them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what radioactive hellscape you live in, but
yeah, you're right though. I think it's an interesting topic that he's brought up, but I've never actually thought too deeply about frenzy. That's always one of the things I've taken for
you made a good
almost.
point. You made for a good point, though. If it's the pig specifically in the nightmare, then there's lots of frenzied blood and like insane people
that's
there.
What I was taking from
if they're eating that, then the stuff they're spewing out is going to be embedded with like those blood particles, and therefore the wills of mad people, and that madness, of course, we're now absorbing, and then that's gonna now infect our wills, because it's not just our own will and blood. It's now someone else's blood and will. As we know with that can get very nasty. So yeah, I can understand it from there, but yeah, I don't think communion with Great One is necessary because of that. It can happen. We see how people go mad from like Great Ones and stuff like that, but I don't think that's the mechanism every time the frenzy status is
because
used.
You're right. It's often physical as well. So when it's what they called the winter lanterns and the brain of Mensis, it's
them
physical.
just staring at you.
It's actual spears that are like spears of blood that are affecting your blood, right?
Yeah.
It's like an actual blood transfusion almost.
Or when they try to like eat you or whatever,
right,
devour you, like you're being like put into like the belly of the beast, right?
Yeah, it's physical. Whereas if it was this, then it would be not physical, right? So yeah. It's definitely a good point, but I've never thought in frenzy that much before. But yeah,
well, it makes sense in case there's cases where we have like people praying and they have we take the skull of a madman from it or something like that. So there's definitely cases where you commune with great ones and stuff. But like that's just like I think we all like have basic like Lovecraftian knowledge there to understand. Like that's just a thing when you commune with the arcane in general though. And like any element of the arcane you deal with has a risk of you overloading and going mad and dying because
and that's why all the familiars are essentially bursting out of the head of the skulls and stuff. Whereas this is like you say, agitation of the blood transfusion type stuff. Yeah, but it's interesting discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's the most outrageous theory.
No, it's absolutely not.
I just think it's overcomplicated.
I just haven't thought that deeply in frenzy before. I've always just assumed it's a physical thing, really.
Yeah. And when I say overcomplicated, I mean I come from the perspective of what I would consider common sense, but the idea of Occam's razor of just like what happens
to you when you get frenzy? Yeah.
It's
usually a physical attack.
Yeah, what's the simplest explanation that includes all the evidence and anything that you could possibly factor into there and explains it, right? Like we don't need to like add stuff on top of it if we can just come up with something that uses just the baseline of the evidence we have. Now maybe if we get something in the future that would tell us that there's always a Great One communing, that'd be great, but I don't think we have that, and I think the mundane stuff just makes more sense in that light. And that should be understood is that I always I always use an Occam's razor analysis, because generally speaking, I think that's how Miyazaki expects you to do that if you're trying to understand that. Because otherwise, if you're trying to include like too much extraneous things or things you cannot possibly do, then suddenly it just becomes, okay, we're gonna guess. And if we're all expected to randomly guess, then then it's all just fun theory crafting. There's no point to any of this.
Also, we encounter a lot of great ones, and they don't just passively give us frenzy when they look at us. So
yeah, Ebrietis has to like scream and stuff, or I think some attacks will sometimes do it. So like
Yeah,
but it's a cool theory. I really think this is a cool theory.
I enjoy the looking into frenzy. Definitely, like I said, I've never really thought that heavily on it, but it's not a bad idea at all.
All right, so the next theory is that healing blood is menstrual blood. The really good stuff is produced by young female NPCs.
The really good stuff.
The run-of-the-mill stuff is probably watered down.
Yes, I love drinking my menstrual blood.
Yeah, I could go on for 10,000 words, but I'm tired right now.
Can't wait for the vid. Love heart. Right. There's definitely like logic to this, right? When we look at things like the vile bloods and the which are obviously in Japanese closer to Kigari, right? The corruption, or impure, not corruption, impure.
Yeah. They're described so like the term vile blood is actually just referring to the essentially means like a blood family or the blood relatives, etc. Right? The term though, is kagare is used in relation to them to talk about like corruption, impurity,
which
depravity,
which can relate Kagare itself. The impurity can relate to menstruation, right?
There's
definitely a little bit of logic.
There's a religious history there that does tie that in, right? Death, menstrual blood, things like that.
Birth sometimes as well.
It's inevitable that when Miyazaki was concepting this, he had those things at the back of his mind, at least, just as like a Japanese man living in Japan would have basic like understanding, especially a man who's like a writer and stuff, so he probably knows this more than like say the average person.
That will go over
like
a lot of our heads in the West. To be fair, well, I should just think they're vile bloods.
Here in the West, we're all about that menstrual blood. Man.
Don't get me started. No, me and Aesir have got a Kagari club. We love Kagari. We love Kagari, don't we? Don't we, Aesir? We love it. We're mad for it.
Definitely mad. But with Kagare and things like that, the inclusion of menstrual blood in there is definitely possible, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a theoretical Bloodborne 2 if like menstrual blood actually became like a centerpiece at some point, and be like, oh no, this is the purest, most like I could see an item of like someone's he probably would have to censor it, so he wouldn't say that directly for like reasons or something, but like
absolutely logic to it, given that all women are the main sources, and a lot of the game's motifs and themes are about childbirth.
Miyazaki has always respected the fairer sex in his games, where he always has women have some unique capacity that is absent for men, and that usually doesn't extend in the gameplay side of things. But you see this with like say witches and Demon Souls. You see this with you see this just in general in Dark Souls as well. You see this of course in Bloodborne.
Firekeepers in Dark Souls.
Yeah, obviously. To some extent, you
mainly Empyreans are mainly feminine in Elden Ring as well.
Yeah, like the only male we have is Mikola, and obviously he's portrayed as incredibly effeminate. So like there's definitely this idea where like Miyazaki definitely likes highlighting women as like the childbirthers, having some unique capacity to them as a result that is absent from men because of this, and therefore they have a unique place in society, even if it's not always like say acknowledged or like placed on like the highest pedestal or whatever in that society. So in the case of what we're talking about with menstrual blood and stuff, it's true. The Healing Church relies primarily, seemingly, on using the blood of women in order to help add, you get a little bit of that, Great One blood, and then later Lawrence's Beast blood, and then you mix that in with some high-quality women's blood that they extract, and then you now have a diluted but still incredibly potent blood to use for blood transfusions, and all that with the Healing Church. All these blood treatments are now going to be super potent for their experiments and things, right? So like the whole idea of blood saints definitely, I think, I don't know if it would be,
but you're right. Maybe that second game it would just outright eventually become that. But you're right. It's not said in this game.
At the very least, it was worth exploring, because the problem we see with Blood Saints is it's not like we have a bucket under Annalise or whatever her name was in the research hall, who who like you don't have like a bucket under her chair she's strapped to or whatever, right? You see the typical stuff where like, oh, they're taking it from the arm or stuff. So I don't know if they would actually be using menstrual blood at the healing church in a Bloodborne, but I could see in a Bloodborne 2 there being like, you know, the healing church 2.0, and they're like, I don't know, they're founded, like Aesir and I've talked about this, they're founded from like the executioners or whatever, and they're all fanatical and stuff, and they don't really get this stuff. So they're trying to get the purer blood, and they discover that they can get it from getting menstrual blood, and they violently, I don't know, extract it from women that way. Like,
and that's the most potent variety. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because it comes right. I could see that. I could see that being the case,
Same.
and in
and
the
of course,
future. But
just classically, there's the moon has a big relevance in Bloodborne.
Oh
of course,
yeah,
as well.
with
Of course.
Flora.
So obviously that's strongly linked to the term menstruation and etc.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weight to what they're saying. It's
same thing with like same thing with menses. I told this to Aesir in a podcast last time, but like menses is like Latin for month, and for those that don't know, the Japanese kanji for moon is the same one as for month, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yes.
it's all connected there. So it's like with the school
it's
of
not
menses,
said. It's not said, but I definitely could. He wants to say that this is their understanding of healing blood. I'm totally on board with it.
I don't see it. I don't see it happening in the game, but I think the logic is sound, and that it's something that it's like Dark Souls 3. There's a lot of concepts in Dark Souls 1 that if you take them to their logical conclusion, you arrive at where you're at in Dark Souls 3 with many of the things they do. So it's very obvious that if Miyazaki did the same in Bloodborne, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the same thing with menstrual blood.
You're right. In a sequel, definitely could see that being explored, maybe in a bleak way at least.
Yeah, because he would look at that and he'd be like, well, what about then menstrual blood? If blood and this is the higher quality and women have it, then wouldn't it be like the thing that's most connected to a woman, which would be like her menstruation and her womb and things it's totally. I think it's totally possible. Like you see it with the Ghost of Kos, right? Her like the placenta is like the weapon of the Orphan of Kos and stuff that's taken, right? And that's where the source of all the curses. That's where the Orphan of Kos is like throwing all those like what is it?
Hey.
Sorry.
Well, I know I don't know the word.
Damn
for
it, Loki. Oh, I need to clean that up.
Darn.
It's right there, isn't it? It's right there thematically. It's just not outright said. It's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It is there.
Yeah, I mean, we have like the reason why we have all of these matriarchal societies in Bloodborne is because the Great Ones, when they commune with humans, they commune with women who are able to carry children. So,
because they want to bless them with child.
Yeah, but it's like, all we would have needed is one line in the game that sets menstrual blood. Or one line that highlights it, and it's like, okay, now it all connects. But it's it's right there at the fringes.
Yeah, that's usually all you need, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, I could see it happening in a Bloodborne 2, because Miyazaki just would have to write, like, he just needs to, like, obviously set up the framework and the environmental storytelling to, like, fit that context. But, like, you just need one. You need one item.
Yeah, and the ideas of fertility are there when you talk about Erden. I can't remember her name. NPC in the church that gets birthed with Erden's child.
Adeline? No.
Adeline. No.
Okay, yeah, Adeline. Okay.
It's Annalise, Cainhurst, Ariane, Adeline.
Wow, this is bad. No, Adeline's the one in the
yeah, she's Nightmare. In the research hall, and there's one more A name, and it's
Ariane.
The funny part is you could tell Miyazaki, because like most of these names are like
it's
different
Ariana.
derivatives.
It is Ariana.
Yeah. I like how like all those are like they're derivatives of like the same name, right? So like they all have the same meaning and stuff. And you can tell that Miyazaki was just like going through names. It's like, I want a name that means this, and he found all these options. He's like, okay, well I only need one of them, so I guess I'll just call these other characters with the other options I didn't choose.
Yeah, I'm here for it. But her umbilical cord that you get from her child specifically talks about her corrupted blood being the reason that this liaison could take place. Words of that to those effect. And what does that mean? Is that to do with the fact of her fertility status, or is it
has to do with her being from Cainhurst? I'm pretty sure.
Her lineage or whatever. But it's all there to be plugged in to the lore. Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
because the idea was that her corrupted blood as a person of Cainhurst
it's a strong
was
medium. A strong medium.
That's what drew Odin to
to her specifically.
The term Eldritch Liaison in Japanese is like arcane or mysterious relations, right? So the idea of like, okay, like it's her being from Cainhurst and having that corruption there is useful. And again, where would that corruption be centered? Logically,
exactly.
at the center of the woman's parts,
of the
right?
reproductive system, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all there, and I do like this. What he's brought up, it's things definitely were discussed early days of Bloodborne lore as well. It's just not overtly mentioned. And as you say, look, I imagine sequel, it would be mentioned at some point. I definitely
Give us Bloodborne 2 already, Miyazaki. Do it! Do it!
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely there. I think he's spot on there.
He's busy, Loki. He's playing Idolmaster.
Oh, damn.
He's
Is he gonna keel over because of it too?
He's playing Honkai with Loki every night.
Aww, Miyazaki's so sweet.
Yeah,
we get to enjoy.
Party up
You know what?
together.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he looked at Honkai for inspiration for some of his games, because goddamn, there's a lot of shit there.
Hey, again.
I'm sorry.
My goodness, Loki. My goodness, this is a family-friendly podcast.
This is
family
a family-friendly podcast about menstrual blood.
Family-friendly. Talk about menstruation.
I'm sorry. I ruined it. The appetizer, so I'm not gonna like you now. It's my fault.
I actually got into trouble recently. I was live streaming with the boys. You know, I had the docs. You know, and we were talking about our Game of the Year award, and they swore so much that YouTube demonetized me, and I spent like a month having to fight off every single stream. Be like, well, you know, are you sure you can advertise this? I was like, yes, and it was like taking longer to verify. They ruined my good standing with YouTube.
It's fine. You need to just block out Loki's swears with some kind of famous line from Bloodborne.
I usually just do the
Gehrman's cry. Just Gehrman's cry.
Or Gascoigne's like, or like something like that with his sniffing or something.
Lovely.
I can probably get. You know how whenever you sort of disconnect the grunts in video games, it always just sounds like really homoerotic moaning. I could probably put in one of those. I think the advertisers would love that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever known that before, Aesir, but okay.
Yes. I'm glad to know that you look into that stuff.
Not a detail I've
People
ever investigated.
were tweeting about this when Resident Evil 4 came out. They had all of Leon's audio. Listen.
Anything I've seen you tweeting about Resident Evil is about a yellow paint. That's all I've seen you tweet about.
It's true. I didn't tweet about the homoerotic moaning.
I'm actually sorry.
I just noticed it.
I'm gonna get him started on yellow paint. Actually, better not. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The next theory is that the whole thing is the work of a cute but devious Japanese dog balancing on a stool in a futuristic room full of buttons and levers. First of all,
that's not one. Where is it?
Futuristic room full of buttons and levers. Like,
it's
a
Silent Hill 2, right?
Yeah, but it's like that's not a futuristic room.
It was in the early 2000s, right?
So the next theory is that since you appear to be locked in a time loop until you finish the game, after all, you can take 80 hours to complete 12 hours in game until dawn. I don't think that's of any relevance. Let's go on.
No, there's no time in the dreams that are relevant to the real world. Surely, I don't want to say surely if we all know.
I think they're talking about. I think they're talking about the waking world and how like you can spend like 50 hours in like afternoon, and then like you can spend another like 40 hours in like nighttime or whatever, and like time doesn't advance beyond like the plot specific points. But I think that just goes to show that Miyazaki and From Software have always been trying to get a day-night cycle simulated in their games,
so
and like it's not until Elden Ring that they actually got it working the way they wanted.
Right, but I think this might be another bleed into one of the other theories you've got here, Aesir. But what about the idea that as soon as you wake up from the blood transfusion, all of it's a dream. All of it's a dream.
Oh.
And when you wake up, that's the obviously when you do the wake up ending, that's the true wake up. But even the first stage Yharnam is a dream. Is a dream.
I think there's problems with that just from the way the narrative plays out, and like the different like you going within like a dream within a like now we're talking about like you're
Inception.
You're going within
it's Inception. Yeah, Inception,
you're going within dreams within dreams within dreams within dreams.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that like the basic understanding of how the plot would go forward is simply that okay. You go under because of the blood transfusion, and then you are about to like you get obviously you're about to be like taken over by like beasthood or whatever, right? You're being infected by the disease.
Why would you say no? Wait a minute. The word you were looking for was infested. Why did you go there?
I infected actually, but yeah.
Okay,
I
infected.
misspoke. I misspoke. I was like, oh shit.
I've psyched
As
you
I was
out. I've talked too much
I was
about it.
Yeah.
As I was correcting myself, I was like, wait, that could be interpreted a different way.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, okay, yeah. So during the whole point, you were supposed to be infected by the beast and all that stuff, and then you obviously get quote unquote saved by like the doll finding you with the messengers and like tying you to the dream. So at the very least, even if we are still infected, at the very least we could theoretically stave it off as like a hunter and things like that. Whatever, right? Like you could make a case there. So you are being tied to a dream by taking the transfusion, and I guess you could argue in that sense you are waking into a dream. But like I think the actual Yharnam we're in is still like physical Yharnam. Like everything is pretty much consistent there. Like it feels like another one. It feels like it's adding another layer unnecessarily.
Yeah, like I don't see what this like if the whole thing is in a dream. Like okay, what does that add? But
well, what does that change for the plot?
It doesn't necessarily add anything, I guess.
We should,
if anything, it takes away anything because it's saying that there's been no effect on the reality of the actual Yharnam and all the players in it. So like theoretically, Mikolash is still causing chaos that's destroying Yharnam anyways.
And Gascoigne actually is alive.
Gascoigne's alive.
He wasn't actually there. It was just his dream variant of him, basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
just
like
a dream, bro.
Yeah,
just a dream, bro.
Like, there's just so many problems there, especially if we're supposed to believe that, like, when we meet... Because here's the thing, like, Yharnam isn't destroyed already, so it's not like this is some, like, oh, Yharnam was destroyed a long time ago, we're just experiencing a past of Yharnam or something like that. And, like, all inconsistencies we see in, like, the environmental storytelling or whatever isn't due to, like, the devs and, like, or whatever. Like, it has to do with, like, oh, it's all because it's part of a dream.
And we know that messengers can manifest, so the lamps aren't a problem because there's literal messenger statues all the way through Yharnam, right?
Oh,
so they can manifest
in reality
people,
too.
pull people through. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's just so much that would have to be like reevaluated there. It doesn't really make sense with the idea of, oh, we go to Yharnam, it's a place, it's clearly still existing, it has a person of the Healing Church running it, but then we wake up and now suddenly we are going through this entire dismantling of the Healing Church overnight, but it was actually not real at all. Like, it didn't actually happen. It's like, I don't know. It just creates a, what was the point then? I guess you could argue that's the bad ending and you're actually supposed to become a great one is the true good ending or something, because at least you're doing something.
Oh, that is the good ending. Come on. I want to be a big floating
I want to be a slug.
Big slug, yeah, I want to be one.
Did you just swear now?
By the way, I didn't. Floating,
sir.
Floating, yes. It's just my accent. Explain
that to the advertiser. Explains that to the advertisers. It's just his accent.
Sorry, guys, just my accent.
I was talking about ships and flapping.
There are certain words when I record a script that I have.
Did you say ours? Or did you say ours?
There are certain words I have to re-record when I do a script because I listen back to that. I'm like, that doesn't sound good. But yeah, I don't believe this theory. Just FYI, I was just bringing it up because I did see it later down on your thing, and it does kind of connect to what you were saying. See at moments like when you give the password to the gatekeeper at the edge of the forest. Is this just reality being affected by the moon? Are we saying at this
magic,
point?
Bro.
The idea is that because the gatekeeper's already dead, right?
Yeah, he's dead. He's long dead. Long dead as well.
Yeah, so he's long dead. So like what we're interacting with is his ghost. That is like what remnants of his will and stuff like that. It's similar to why is the letter to Cainhurst on our sick bed when we come back to the place through the Forbidden Woods.
And how can we actually get to Cainhurst when the bridge is destroyed? And in fact,
the horses
that we rode in are dead.
The horses. Like all of it's because it all has to do with blood, and there's the physical aspect of blood, but there's also the spiritual stuff, and so much like in our own world, it has this sort of gothic ghost aspect to it, where like the blood will manifest like spirits to various extents that can interact and manipulate reality to stuff, and whether or not they're fully conscious and they can like control things to the same aspect. Again, we can argue and debate about that, but that's separate. I think generally just the idea is that most of the stuff we see in the game can be justified in the idea that this is all real, but there's magical supernatural stuff that exists in this world. You don't need to go to the extra layer of, it's actually all just part of a dream world.
I just finished reading the theory. The theory doesn't actually have much to do with the dream.
Okay,
so the theory is just about time. But there was another theory about the dream. Maybe we can get back to this. But it goes, since you appear to be locked in a time loop until you finish the game, after all, you can take 80 hours to complete 12 hours in game until dawn, your body isn't left behind when you die. It simply stops existing. as if you cut the thread in the pattern and mend it back when you respawn, but way in the back. The few time checkpoints being Amelia, Rom, and Wetners. So I think those are very arbitrary checkpoints.
Yeah,
So, like,
arbitrary
yeah.
checkpoints. Yeah, this is something I talk about with bonfires in Dark Souls and stuff. There isn't an actual bonfire in that cell where you're trapped with after Seath like whoops your ass.
No,
Damn.
that's just like the conceit of gameplay.
That's the conceit of gameplay.
Yeah.
You're having a prison break sequence. They at the time they only had a checkpoint sequence through bonfires and stuff, so you can level up, change your gear. Blah,
Where
blah,
it's
blah,
just
blah,
a chip.
like-
It's just a checkpoint. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And all they have to change is just saying, okay, you can't actually warp out of here, and it's not some in-universe reason for that. It's because this is a prison break sequence, so they're not going to let the checkpoint that you have here be like, you don't break the sequence by just you have the Lord Vessel and can like warp away, right? Like same thing with like the Painted World. And it's the same thing here in like we have a similar prison break sequence, but they're able to just have it where you're in there, and then you can go to a very close nearby lantern to light there. So like it's a similar idea they do there, and like otherwise it seems to be mostly arbitrary. Like the only time I think we ever see an interaction that would confirm like, okay, these lanterns exist in lore, at least one of them is the one in the nightmare where it gets broken, right, when we go back to it after the blood moon and stuff, and we see like all the the different other hunters or whatever that are down there, whatever. It's like, okay, so they broke the lantern, so we couldn't use that one, we have to use a different one that's like in the next room or something, right?
I do like the idea though that like how Radahn holds back the stars, they're holding back like the menses ritual, and it's like we're actually physically holding back time, because time is not just a concept, it's also this fixed thing that can be interacted with in the dreams or something. But like I don't think there is text in the game that talks about this.
Well,
No.
the night can go on forever, right?
Yeah.
Theoretically,
That's you not continuing the game.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But I guess
like when they're talking about the Beast Hunt night and how to end this endless night, they're talking about just the concept of, because again the Japanese, they use the term of, they talk about the night in English and stuff, but they're talking about the Beast Hunt night, and again like hunters are often called beast hunters specifically, right? So there's this idea that there's this Beast Hunt night where everything from like from twilight to like the next morning, hunters go out and they're out searching, because again at night
they're
there's
clearing
this,
the streets.
clearing the streets of all the beasts and stuff, creatures. Like, beasts can appear during the day, but obviously night and the connection between night and the arcane and the stars and all that, so it's obvious that at night is probably when transformations are probably at their peak, right?
Yes.
So then they're going out there and, like, clearing the streets of any of the beasts and stuff, and when they're most likely to be active or have the greatest burst on those nights. And the idea is that these nights are happening more and more frequently.
And they're commonplace, right? They're
they
part
become
of Yharnam culture. Part of Yharnam culture.
Specifically after the Healing Church, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yharnam always had these,
of course, after the Healing Church comes in,
after the Healing Church and the idea, like, the Healing Church just keeps on cranking out more and more beasts, and like you have to wonder how Yharnam has sustained its population until now with all these transformations.
Yeah,
but, like,
when everyone's basically dead in the one night that we're there. Yeah, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So it's like, so like you have all, like, the idea is that like these nights are happening more and more frequently. Like, there's more and more beasts, like more and more people are doing so. Like, the situation's getting worse and worse, and the idea is that it's going to be endless until either everyone's dead or someone actually permanently solves the problem, right? So like the idea that like
I do think you're right there, but I always thought that, is this night not worse than what's been previous because of the Mantis ritual?
They do say it's been getting
Because of the
worse.
meddling. Yeah, they say that this is like the longest night or something like that. I can't remember the
Well,
exact
no.
title.
What it says is the moon is close. It's going to be a long night.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be a long night, right?
Yeah, because again, this goes back to the
Is that not
arcane
because of Mantis? Is that not because Mantis are meddling? That it's
No,
making
because
it
that's the red
maybe
moon
worse.
thing. The idea is that, because the idea again is the stars, and again it goes back to our point about, like, the connection between the cosmic and the arcane and exposure. At night, obviously, there's a greater exposure to the stars, i.e. the great ones, and that's to arcane properties, so more things are happening at night. But then the idea is that, okay, the moon, obviously the most powerful quote-unquote star, Flora, she is closer to us on the waking world at this point, physically, and that's going to translate into even more arcane exposure. That's causing even more agitation of the blood.
It's made it worse. So, it's made it a more intense experience.
And Gehrman encapsulates that by saying, okay, it's going to be a long night, right? Like, there's going to be more beasts. It's going to take forever, right? And obviously, there's the meta idea, like what this person's pointing out, which is like, okay, you are basically trapped in this idea where you could spend 40 hours and it's going to be still nighttime, right? Like, you're not actually. It's not like time is flowing with your game. How long you spend playing the game, but like that is true in so many games, and we don't have to come up with weird time loop theories to justify it. It's a game, bro. Like they can't account for like every single factor of like how long a player spends in any given area or whatever. Like Dark Souls does something similar, right? Like you start out and it's like, it's daytime for most of the time during Dark Souls, unless you go into Dark Root Garden early or whatever, right? And therefore it's going to be obviously instant night and then instant day when you go back and forth. Then you get to Anor Londo and it starts you get to Sen's Fortress in the sky, like the sun gets higher. Then you get to Anor Londo and now it's a setting sun. And then you kill sorry. And then you kill Guinevere, and suddenly now it's hit nightfall, right? So it's like they're obviously trying to showcase how time is advancing and changing, and trying to take advantage of that in their larger narrative.
It's easier to understand in Dark Souls, definitely, because there's other forces at play that have an effect on the state of the world. Definitely, I think it's easier to understand there for sure. Whereas you're right, in Bloodborne you can just say it's a long night, it's a game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The canon story is your 100 didn't take that long to do X, Y, Z.
It's them trying to simulate a day-night cycle in a game that isn't conducive to a day-night cycle, compared to like say Elden Ring, where like does it matter how many days or years, quote unquote, we go through in Elden Ring before we finish? Like the game state's still the same. Like it's not like time is advancing there either. Are we gonna argue there's a time loop now in Elden Ring too, where no matter how many days passes, like the freaking Godric soldiers are still gonna be doing their same patrols on that same path no matter what? Like of course.
The next theory, I actually really like this theory. I never thought about this. Logarius is basically Allant. They sit on a throne waiting for you, same sword shape, same magical wing shape, both kings. There is a lot of similarities in their boss fights.
Definitely.
I could see the idea that Logarius, at least at one point in development, was concepted as to be like a spiritual successor to Allant.
Yeah, because like we know,
does he not make the same noises as well, like the noises? Is that not like the original one that Allant used to make as well?
I have to look actually. I don't know if that's like this. Maybe it's the same audio.
It's very similar. It's very similar.
I mean, they have reused Demon Souls audio before. Yeah. Like in Dark Souls, the channelers use a reversed reverb of like what's his name? Please help me. With, Rydell.
Oh,
yeah. Rydell. Yeah.
Oh,
so, like,
yeah.
Yeah, so they use Rydell's audio for the channels. I remember joking at the time. I'm like, I see. So the imprisoned became the imprisoner.
Yeah.
So it's like yeah, they've definitely done that before. So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually used Allant's audio and they
I think it's that throaty growl that they both have. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely similarities. I always knew that the sword was, the same sword. Always enjoyed that because it's one of my favorite sword designs in all of the Souls games.
There's a good one.
And in cut content, we know that Logarius was originally designed to just be like a Cainhurst or Tumeru king. So
it makes way more sense that he was that, given the way that you face him. It feels like the story has been made to fit where he is, how he looks, and how you fight him. Do you know what I mean? It's been warped to say that he's actually imprisoning them there, when it actually feels like he's the king of them, almost, and the way he looks and everything.
Well, it's very clear. It's very obvious, like, just looking at his design, that his design doesn't
look
match.
like an executioner. Yeah, he doesn't look like an executioner.
Yeah, that's a problem. And trying to, like, to justify it in the lore about, like, he wears the crown for the illusions. Okay, did he really have to get in the full getup too? Like, did he change his clothes? Is he like, yes, I need to wear the full king regalia?
But also, why not just take the crown and go? Because the way it works is you need the crown to see the.
Why not just throw it in the ocean?
Yeah, why not break it and throw it in the ocean, right?
Well, the idea is he's like supposed to be like a guardian or something.
He's a guard. Yeah, he's a guard.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a guardian to help keep it so that way frickin' Queenie stays trapped forever and ever, right?
True.
Like,
Yeah.
Right, and you can always make some magical justification. If you just throw out the crown or something, maybe the magic would be dispelled after a certain point. Like, you could come up with like realistic explanations. The problem though is like how he dresses and like the weapons. He doesn't use trick weapons.
Aesthetically, he's nothing. He's more like the Cainhurst. Yeah, he definitely is. For sure.
He's definitely a Cainhurst or a Tumeru King in like designs. And we know there was multiple like Tumeru King designs and bosses. Like some are more Gwyn-like and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so even his staff is like an elder staff, kind of, I guess.
Like you look at those weapons, it's very clearly not a hunter's weapon.
Yeah,
and like but like it has all the cursed ghost things that would make sense for someone who hunted the Cainhurst people with their weapons.
The cursed
like
blood.
with the,
it's the cursed blood.
Yeah. Like so all of that. So like it's one of those things where it's like it's this mix of stuff that doesn't really make sense, but it totally makes sense if you're like, oh, okay, so he was like a Cainhurst king. Yeah. So like then he used like even one of the portraits shows his outfit. It shows like a younger person. I haven't noticed that. Yeah. If you check out my check out like my Executioner or Cainhurst blogs, and like you'll see like I can show you the comparison. One of the portraits has someone like a young strapping scion of the Cainhurst family with like red hair and all flowing red hair and all that with the same outfit as Logarius.
He's always felt rejigged. He's always felt not quite right as the master of the executioners.
Yeah, it's like why Sullivan doesn't wear shoes as the Pontiff.
Yeah.
It's because they copy pasted his design from a final boss that was for a different context, and they're just like, well, this mostly works.
Yeah. What was the original question?
There was just an observation that the fights are very similarly.
Oh, that it is, and they're both great fights. Both brilliant fights.
It's the same with the One Reborn and Tower Knight, same boss arena.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Always have those Demon Souls references.
Of course. Did I ever tell you guys about my Mikolash fix? This is what I want to do. I'm gonna become a Bloodborne modder. Okay.
Oh no.
And what I'm gonna do, and I think I talked about this.
I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
What I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna make it so that after you kill Mikolash, if you go back to the Advent Plaza, his corpse is not gonna be in the chair anymore. It's gonna be like. It's going to be dead outside the door. So, like, he kind of, after he woke up in his mummified body, he lived for, like, a minute and tried to drag himself somewhere, but then he died.
Before he expired,
I do kind of like that, yeah. I do really like, in general, Mikolash's reality, that he's in the dream and you kill him. Oh, but I'm going to wake up again. Nah, bro. You're waking up in a dead body, bro.
Nah.
Well, it's one of those things where it's very cool because like the idea is like he's so crazy that
he's far gone. Yeah.
He treats this like it's like dreams as we understand. Where it's like, oh no, I'll wake up and I'll forget everything. It's like, dude,
bro, you ain't waking up.
You got bigger problems. Like it's one of those ideas where it's like it's cool like how like Mikolash's character in general and how they handle him is neat.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah. You know, it's like they say. You know, to Mikolash, a crazy frog. It's just a frog. It's a normal frog.
What did you just say there? Did you swear there, Aesir?
No, frog.
Frog.
Right,
okay. All right.
Little it's blue guy with the cock and balls. You know.
Oh.
I've always had the theory that Yharnam itself, or rather the version of it we explore, is a nightmare realm. Nights of the Hunt, Blood Moons are when reality and nightmare blur together, allowing people to unintentionally pass into the nightmare version, where they're trapped and doomed to either die in the chaos or rapidly go mad, or transform because their seemingly increased power of the Scourge and other forces in said nightmare. My reasons for this are 1, the sheer amount of beasts and other creatures, as well as the level of disorder and decay in the city seems like too much for it to have been just a normal functioning city a few hours earlier. 2, a lot of the architecture looks fine at a glance, but looks off on closer scrutiny, particularly in the city areas, like the pit you drop down to find the hunter's set has a door on its edge. That doesn't seem right. 3, just how easy it is to enter other nightmares, as well as how easy it is for kin of the cosmos and great ones to show up in this one. You'd think it would take a bit more effort to enter an alternate dimension, but here we can do it via something as simple as touching Mikolash's corpse. It makes more sense if we were already in an adjacent nightmare, meaning there's less of a barrier to reach others. And 3, the Yharnam Sunrise ending, similar to point 1, with how bad things got over the course of the hunt, you wouldn't think things would just carry on as normal the next morning unless not all of what happened in-game happened in the real Yharnam. So,
Well,
can I just?
The point of the ending is that like all the chaos and stuff has already been exhausted. So like there's not many people left at the end.
Yeah. So like for point 1, the sheer amount of beasts and such is like it wouldn't have been a normal functioning city a few hours earlier. It's not a normal functioning city. It's like a cult.
Have you seen the graves?
Yeah, but
it's England, bro.
Yeah, it's England, bro. No, but it's like a crazy police state run by this insane cult. It's England, bro. No.
Yeah, it's England. Yeah.
A lot of the architecture looks fine at a glance, but looks off on closer scrutiny. This is because
you can say that for a lot of FromSoft games.
Yeah, this is just because
it's an uncanny city. It is uncanny. But
yeah, but they also
place.
just sometimes rotate maps. Like we have to rotate this area 13 degrees to make these two paths line up. But if we do that, then this door doesn't, like, it goes to a tower that's standing on nothing, and it's like, well...
There's
like,
a random lift where there doesn't need to be, and then there's a ladder going up straight up the side of a tenement for some reason.
There's fences like that. There's fences that keep you from entering buildings, even though there's doors right in front of them. Like, how do they get out of their houses?
The gate next to the little girl opens out onto an edge with a ladder that goes straight down. No city's built with ladders in residential areas. It's just...
Or how does any of the sisters there, or the fact the houses themselves don't make sense, and that like Gilbert's house is basically that room he talks to you out the window from. Like there's no room for any other more house. Like a lot of this is just artistic license.
It's a game as well.
It's a game. Oh, it does like we were talking about this earlier. There's too many beasts. It's amazing how the population goes. Like we joke about that, but that's because we understand it's a game. It doesn't have to.
Sometimes you do just have to stop.
Like we have a line here. It's how easy it is to enter nightmares. If it's all a nightmare, it would be easier to enter them. That's not true. Like why would it be easier to jump from one nightmare to another? Why wouldn't it be easier to jump from reality to nightmare?
I do want to. I know we obviously kind of roundly disagree with it, but it was kind of what I was getting at before when we discussed this before, when I was talking about the what if you're always been in a nightmare type thing. Yeah. And yeah, I'm not saying I agree with it, but like, what if the moon is affecting things slightly, and there is slight overlaps, which is how you're able to cross the bridge at Cainhurst, even when the bridge is long broken.
There's the
ideas that there's
elements.
little blends of unreality blending over, or little bits of the dream crossing over. It's not entirely ludicrous.
We see the mad ones that appear in like Hamlet and stuff at night and things like that.
Right.
But that all ties into like again insight and what we talked about earlier with the supernatural and like ghosts and blood and wills and spirits and all that. So like again, all of that works within the confines of a real world with fantastical elements. It doesn't require us to think that we seamlessly shift into a dreamscape at some point during our journey. And that is supposed to justify why things don't make sense. Because, like, things still, like, even in, like, say, the final cutscene, like, we're still in the same Yharnam that doesn't necessarily make sense. Like, it's not like that's going to change anything.
I definitely agree with you, but I also can understand from their perspective how you could accept this as your version of Bloodborne. I definitely could see the moon warping things. There's lots of bits of slipping in and out. That's how you're able to cross the bridge to Cainhurst, etc.
Yeah, I just think it relies a lot on like things that we all accept are just part of games.
True. Yeah, true.
Like we all accept that they're just
design. Yeah.
Like we all accept that they're just copy pasting different assets and stuff in different directions, and sometimes that's intentional, but most of the time it's just them trying to fill out to give you this idea when you're exploring. You're not expected to actually look that closely at every little thing in order to.
And the kind of the cosmos thing. There's tons of the kind of the cosmos in Yharnam because of the
Souls
church
community and absolute shambles.
The church, as we discussed in my choir video, Lokey, the kind are being created, by the church as well. So
there's tons of stuff there that
there's scientific explanation, not science, yeah,
magical science explanation.
Yeah, alchemy and science and stuff going on in the deepest parts of Yharnam, which is why they're kind of loose out onto the streets. But yeah, I know, like I agree with you. I think that you are in the real Yharnam, but I've heard this before, where people believe that the moon is affecting the reality of the world, and
totally.
I don't think it's the
I can see it.
I don't think it's the worst theory. I just don't think it pans out when we look at it too closely.
Sure.
I think it's yeah. I mean, it's one of those theories where like it could be true, but the reason I don't really like it is because I don't think it adds much if it is true. Like it feels like
And
it feels like
it'd be outright stated a little bit more clearly as well. I think
It's like when someone talks about how like, oh, this childhood cartoon you loved was actually really screwed up, and like you see all the different stuff, and you're like, okay, sure, buddy, like sure, it's a nice little thought exercise, but
I wouldn't say it's quite as annoying as that. It's more just like
I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's the same like basic concept of like you're looking so deeply at things and trying to connect into this logic where clearly that was not intended to be looked at in the most strictest sense logically.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with this theory, but you know what I love? It's selective cut content. So people who have like theories and they're like if we take the connected universe, they will sometimes point to cut content that support this. But other times, like when we see old Elden Ring builds where they've just taken a bunch of Dark Souls 3 assets and cobbled them together, they won't look at that. That's like, well, obviously that's not part of the connected universe. Even though, like, what do you mean?
It's understandable. We all want to see, what we want to see.
Yeah.
And, you see what you see it in that way, and that's how you see it. You're blind to everything else. Again, I've 100% been guilty of that when I've been doing my lore videos, so I totally understand it. But we've all been there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's part of being human.
The next theory is Gascoigne presents himself as a werewolf, but his true form is a child that starts to cry when he doesn't get to hear his favorite music. I don't need any credit for this theory. Well, you're not getting any. Nobody gets them.
Because I'm taking it and I'm making a video on it.
Oh no. I don't know.
I don't really understand. Does that mean that
it's a joke?
It's just a joke theory.
Right, okay. Oh, it's just a joke. Okay, right, got you.
Yeah, he starts to cry when he doesn't hear his favorite music and when he doesn't get peanuts. That's a deep Loki cut.
Yeah.
Damn. Caught in 4K.
Just a side note. How good is the story surrounding Gascoigne and finding his dead wife in the arena, just as a corpse, where you find the brooch? Yeah. Lovely bit of environmental storytelling. Lovely.
Yeah, I think it's nice overall as a story because it's a very small like
it's so implied. It's a tiny narrative that's implied, and then the girl as well. Well, if she goes in the underground passage,
the way
you get
that
the ribbon from the pig, and again, you're just assuming she was eaten. It's
it's a way to get around the censors. That's very beautiful.
Yeah, I really enjoy the way that story's told. Like you say, it's an absolute microcosm in the greater story, but I really enjoy it.
Well, yeah, and that's what gives a lot of FromSoft games, I think, their heart for a lot of people. Because a lot of people, they don't talk a lot about the big picture stuff because they don't understand it, right? So, like, but they'll remember characters like Sigmire and what they experienced with those characters, or Solaire, or Oscar,
and their
right?
journey. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sigmire's journey is also called his Sigmire grind set.
Like, if you hear like your average,
I don't need any credit for that theory.
Yeah, but like when you hear your average Souls fan, they're not talking about Nito or the Witch of Izalith or things like that. Even though those are stories that I personally really like in their own way, right? Like, but like they'll talk about like their personal stories with like again like those smaller NPCs who they're small, they're small, they're poignant, and they're easy to understand. Even if you don't understand the larger context of the world, you can understand the emotional experience of those characters
because
their journey.
They're well written. Even if they have really short appearances, for sure, definitely.
Like everyone remembers, Alfred. Is it Alfred? Is it Alfred in Bloodborne, or is it
Alfred the Executioner? Yeah.
Yeah, Alfred the Executioner. Everyone remembers Alfred's story. Like it's a like him going crazy at the end is just such a memorable experience. So
it's so good. It's so good. Yeah.
Have you seen the creative doc where you have like Miyazaki's handwriting? Like Solaire, and it's like, it's just Solaire except it's
Solaire
the
with mutton chops, yeah, basically, yeah.
Hey, do you guys think Gascoigne had that dog in him?
What do you mean by that dog in him?
A werewolf.
Oh, the werewolf. Well, it's clear that he's already It's clear that he was already like on the verge of becoming a beast. Like that seems to be the point of his quest. Like him, like having the blind, like the bandages around his eyes and stuff, and the focus on the smell and things like that. Like it's clear that he was like he already had we had the dream of like the beast like coming for us right in the middle of our sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's very clear that Gascoigne had that moment a long time ago, and he was like we're the ones who take him over the edge when we back him in a corner and just force him to embrace the beast within.
So would you say he had that dog in him?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got that dog in him, man.
Yeah, sure.
He's out there.
Whatever you say, Aesir.
Grinding those hunts,
grinding beasts those family members.
Yeah, yeah, literally beasts all over the shop. Someone's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
friendly Irish Gascoigne. That's what it is.
You know, I look at Gascoigne and I think that might be literally me sometimes.
That is peak man. That is
True.
peak man. Yeah.
Is he Irish?
He is Irish, yes. Base all over the shop. That's what he says.
Oh, beasts all over the shop.
Base all over the shop. Yeah, that's what he says, yeah. And Gilbert is Scottish, your wee pal you meet at the beginning.
Oh,
He's Scottish, yeah.
No wonder I like him. He sounds like you.
Yeah, it's actually me. He's literally me.
Actually, me.
I just sit coughing in my window with a very brightly lit window every night. That's what I do.
Lend me your flamethrower sometime. I might need it.
Oh yeah, I've got a flamethrower just behind my windowsill for a passerby.
Yeah, it's like I can't get up, I can't stand, but don't worry, I always got my trusty flamethrower with me.
It's right here. It's right next to me. That's what
Here,
we
let
do
me
in
just
Scotland.
push it out the window for you. You take
I
it.
don't know how, but Miyazaki has got the Scottish personas absolutely down in his game. Whenever he's used them, absolutely down.
a lot of his cooler characters do have Scottish accents. You have like
Stockpile
Godfrey.
Thomas. Stockpile
Allant.
Thomas. That's Stockpile Thomas, eh? Yeah, he's Scottish as well, your boy.
It's me. I'm Stockpile Thomas.
I'm Stockpile Thomas. You've got the heart of gold. See, it was me. It's basically me. He's me for
Literally
real.
you.
Yeah,
That's
just sitting
amazing.
a pile of boxes.
He says after I just drop off all my crap on him and then leave.
Yeah. Literally the souls of all the people I've slaughtered, yeah.
Can I have the ornament? It belonged to my daughter. Oh no.
No.
Oh, thank you anyway.
It's so... Oh, can I have that jade ornament? It belonged to my daughter, you see.
She kinda died.
She died and you cut her down and she fell 50 feet from the top of the tower, splat on the surface.
It was his fault, though.
Yeah.
It was all his fault.
Ran away with his boxes under his arms. Cowardly Scots, all the same.
And,
Okay.
Okay, so the next theory, I have a theory that the Winter Lanterns don't actually look like the doll with a lot of messengers covering its head. I think it remembers something. I think it remembers something in typical Lovecraftian fashion that's so much... Oh, I think...
That's so monstrous.
Yeah, I think it remembers something in typical Lovecraftian fashion that's so monstrous and other that the main character's mind plasters over it with something they associate with comfort. The doll and the messengers. And the effed up look of it is the monstrous thing underneath breaking through.
So so they're saying that the doll appearance is our mind.
Yeah, essentially, it's our
Right,
it's
our
us
projection.
projecting
Right,
it's
okay.
us projecting the doll in order to rationalize
messengers.
and comprehend what
Me
we
and
see.
Loki did discuss this when I did do my Great Ones.
I like this. I like this as an idea, but my
Yeah.
position. It goes back to the Logarius point. It's obvious that when they were first designing
exactly,
this,
but
they
it's
had
just
another idea, and then they kept it over. And in the final game,
It's just a model.
It's a model.
It's just a model.
There.
Yeah, it's just a model. Yeah.
It's a model to fill in, and you're not supposed to look too closely at those details. You're just supposed to focus on it's a vaguely humanoid form with a piece of the brain of
With
Mensis
clothing.
on its head.
With clothing. Yeah.
A clothed
A
humanoid
clothed person.
being,
A clothed
right?
person. Yeah.
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 And like in the final game, I've said this before. My position is maybe one day I'll write in a Mensis thesis, but the idea seems to be is that we the Mensis were experimenting with like putting crow heads on dog bodies and dog heads on crow bodies and all this, and then putting the eyes on the heads of like pigs and stuff that they were importing into the Nightmare as part of this experiment into trying to make the brain of Mensis work.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
or weaponize
okay,
it as like a mobile platform. They created
Well,
these. Yeah.
Yeah, so like because the whole point was that like Mikolash and company asked for eyes within the eyes on the brain. They want a brain with eyes, and the wet nurse is like, sure, I'll give you a brain with eyes, and then she gives like she just pumps out some messengers and crafts this great one that's like this rotten brain matter, right? So it's like I gave you literally what you asked for, so like thank you for giving me my Murgo. So it's like the wet nurse did her part of the job, did her part of the deal, and then like.
The
and
wet
Mikolash
nurse
is
just
sort of
sucks.
Listen, you. This is what happens when you make deals with eldritch beings. You don't know if it's going to be an angel, a devil, or a genie.
This is what happens when you make a deal with a jackass.
Yeah, I love the wet nurse, man. Just so underappreciated. It's just such a like the design visually as well. It's just my favorite, which is why when I did my Great Ones video, I chose that
thumbnail.
as a thumbnail rather than anything else. I love them, man. So cool.
Such a cool thing. But yeah, like the idea is clearly that like you have like all this experiments that the Mensis people are because they want to have eyes on the brain or whatever. They're like, oh, okay, what if we take this brain with eyes and put it on our heads and then it'll actually work and help us ascend to become great ones or whatever ourselves, right? Like that's how we're supposed to do it, right? So they're trying to like make it work within their understanding, and they do all these experiments. But as we see, like everyone's gone crazy and they're dying and they're becoming these eldritch monstrosities or whatever, and then all that's left is like Mikolash with all his like necromancy, like bodies that he's taken, who's gone completely crazy, like combing through tomes, trying to figure out how to get to the result they want within the framework that the Mensis school follows, and well, it's just not working.
Yeah, I basically just to answer this question, I just agree. I've always thought it's just an experiment, and that's just the model they chose for the underneath part.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I like the
late
idea,
in
though.
Bloodborne's production. Let's just
No,
take
but
that
I like that thought process though that we could be projecting, and that like the idea of like the doll is like there. Like I think it's a cool idea. I just feel like I'd want a few more examples of something like that.
It's almost giving it too much credit as well. As well.
Yeah, because like we see some like pretty horrifying things that we don't like try to project something onto. Like no one looks like we're not like fighting Ebrietis and we're like, oh look, hey, it's good.
It's
old
a butterfly.
Humble Gehrman.
It's a lovely butterfly.
It's humble Gehrman in his wheelchair. Oh, Gehrman, where'd you get those tentacles from?
Why are you spitting at me?
Well, Orphan of Kos.
Yeah.
Like Orphan. Yeah, the problem.
We look at the Orphan of Kos and we're like, oh, it's Gehrman. But
in fairness, Orphan of Kos, Mother Kos actually has a lovely face. Have you seen that?
That's true.
Lovely, what a lovely face.
Yeah, true. She has the most human features I think we've seen. Yeah, I think she has the most human features we get to see on a great one.
Yeah, for sure.
So the problem is the context. Yeah, the problem is the context of the nightmare, though, because the wider nightmare like makes it more obvious that it's something else going on than like the idea of like projection and stuff, and that's sort of the problem. A lot of these are trying to give explanations to things that the developers
not
like you said. You're giving them too much credit.
It's a really nice idea, and I would love it if you if you killed them and then like there was like a warbling there was a warbling effect and it was a big squid or something. Yeah, it'd be great.
Oh my god, that'd be so cool.
That would be awesome. But yeah, it's a nice idea, but I think just a little bit too much credit. There is definitely some bosses in From Software games that are just asset flip.
They should that should apply. Like,
definitely. Yeah.
All right. Then there's 4 theories left. What if the player character isn't as benevolent or altruistic as innately expected? Some of the outer influences are dealt with, most of the cultists are gone, and what if the nightmare was an eldritch mercy in some twisted attempt to comfort those who remained, in an effort to spare them from something worse yet to happen? Given the maddening mutacious stimuli throughout the city, what's to say the player character isn't just another instrument of something else, changing one cycle of horrors for another? So, for me, like,
meta sense.
Yeah, but like, this sort of theory.
You can roleplay whatever you want, though, right?
Yeah, I don't hate this sort of theory, but the problem is, to me, is what's to say that this isn't? No, you have to tell me what is the evidence. What's to say that this is the case?
Yeah, that would make sense. Like, what is it that narratively or within the actual game is substantiating that?
I think roleplay-wise, you can play whatever your character wants to be. And
you can play as like a total asshole.
I do sometimes. That's one of the great things about these games is there's a lot of room for you to invent your own narrative about why your player's doing what. But
barring a Bloodborne 2, we can always just assume that the character who chooses to awaken takes over Yharnam and takes over all the experiments because they believe that they want to do this themselves or whatever, right? And they become corrupted, and that's like you could totally think that that's a great way to do so. And barring a Bloodborne 2, which would like cut off that option, like sure, why not?
Yeah.
But the issue, the issue I have like with that is just as like that being like our character from the onset is that again we have the amnesia aspect that we have to consider, so you have to assume our character would regain our memories and we become our true self somewhere down the line, and again possible, but we don't really have anything that really like signals that by the end of the game. And then the other aspect is like, yes, we do have a criminal history for sure, right? I talked about that at the beginning with the hoods and the Decade of the Shadow. Like, it's very clear we're trying to avoid getting caught by the authorities or recognized or anything, or something that can be traced back to us while we're trying to complete our own personal mission related to it. But we don't know what Pale Blood is, and we don't know what it means to transcend or complete or do the bring
there's
the
no
hunt
way
to its
our character knows exactly what Pale Blood is. No,
and we're going to the absolute worst. Like for an outsider, it makes sense why we go to the blood minister at the clinic, right? Like that makes sense in that context. But if we were someone who actually knew what was going on and we were actually trying to like subvert all this in order to do it for ourselves, we went to the absolute worst person to ask about these questions, even if we didn't know this. So like it's like just the way that the game is set up, I feel like precludes that being like something we start out from the beginning. But at the end of the game, sure, I could see it. Barring a Bloodborne 2, I think it's open-ended enough.
Definitely.
To think that we could cause worse horrors in the future.
Well, what this commenter also says is, what's to say the character player isn't just another instrument of something else? We kind of are an instrument in a way in Bloodborne. We only agency we have is the choice we make at the end, is if we defy Gehrman, right? If we do what Gehrman asks us to do and we do let him kill us, then we have just been a complete tool. Yeah. So we are a tool. We are being used for our purpose.
We were a tool to get rid of the to help deal with the factions and cull the immediate problems of Yharnam without dealing with the deeper issues, which was of course Flora and stuff like that.
Without confronting Flora, without confronting Flora itself. So if we do that, when we are a tool, so they are right in that respect. And what we're doing is essentially at the bidding of someone else. It's just whether you make that choice at the end that you've done it ultimately for your own gains at the end.
And like I said, it seems like we're carrying on the will of someone who did have like the deeper knowledge and stuff, and just didn't have the time to explain it to us before they passed. So the idea that we are essentially coming here serving someone else's purpose is definitely there in the game. I just don't know if it's nefarious.
No.
Yeah.
But and for a lot of it, you are doing essentially the bidding of someone else. It is just that decision at the end, whether you take agency for yourself. So there's definitely the element of that.
True. I'm also, what I would really like, and maybe this is something they could experiment with, in Bloodborne 2, coming 2025. It's coming next year, boys. I'm telling you. What they could do is, because Bloodborne, it has covenants, but it's like... it's very half-baked. Why not just, canonize this? Have it be like, well, if you want to join this covenant, you can. But when you join the covenant, you also sort of fall under the influence of this outer entity.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
That could be cool.
I like that. The idea that there's actual factions run by the outer gods, and these outer gods actually try to use you for their own ends through that. That'd be cool. That'd be a nice way to substantiate it.
The covenant runes in Bloodborne actually make this really cool with the milkweed and the beast one. The actual transformations. That is really, really cool.
That's as close as we get to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish there was other games, in the series that did stuff like that. That is really factional, but it's just the depth isn't there for the actual faction. Or belief behind it.
It feels like they added it because people wanted more PvP factions.
And I'm not gonna lie, that was cool. The milkweed stuff is really cool, and the dodging animations and everything for it.
And the beast rune,
really sick. Oh yeah, really sick. Yeah.
Sick. The different. I discovered the attack animation with summoning all the mini slugkin. I was like, oh my god, that's
so cool. Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, oh my god, they didn't have to go that hard.
Yeah, it's above and beyond. But yeah, you're right. It'd be really cool if actually you were maybe on the side of really serving a great one. You literally became their pawn, their servant, and you could have other factions complete anti-great ones that are just full hunter factions. It's stuff like that. There's definitely scope for it.
I've been playing Honkai Star Rail a lot recently, and I've been really loving it. And one of the core aspect of that game's mythology is the idea that you have all these essentially gods of the cosmos or whatever, right? And they're all bound by this certain quote unquote path, which is this aspect of this concept that they are essentially bound to live by. And all the games factions and stuff are essentially all these different essentially cults that are somehow dedicated or revolve around the different gods or whatever. So you have like the Eon of Elation, of Destruction, of Remembrance, of all these things, and they have these very distinct and in-depth philosophies and ideologies and all these different like factions and sub-factions and things that are involved there. And it's really, that's like one of the most fascinating things about Honkai Star Rail lore. So I could see the same thing being done in Bloodborne with like the different great ones, and they all want a child, but they maybe want to go a different way about doing it and how they do so. Or some of them are maybe like there's actual great ones who actually are like actually legitimately benevolent and want to help like deal with the hunt or whatever, and maybe they see that as a way of being like, okay, I'll help you get rid of all the beasts, but then you give me a child or whatever. Like there's so many different ways you can take that can help like make the covenants feel much more in depth than what we have now, which are very sort of like you're like superficially joining like some like different like sub factions that have like a very small role to play in the bigger thing. Like you're never able to join Mensis or the choir or take part in that larger scheme that way.
Yeah, definitely missed opportunity there.
Yeah. Alright then. 3 more. Eyes on the inside isn't what most people think it is. It's about having the eyes of great ones inside you, so that they are able to see through you and perhaps influence and communicate with you.
Yeah, I just kind of disagree with that one. I think it's kind of self-evident at this point what the eyes on the inside are for.
Well, Miyazaki stated repeatedly in interview, the concept is based on the mind's eye.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. It's the idea that ironically, this works really well in the English localization with the actual term insight, right? The sight in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like there's this idea of like, okay, eyes within, like that actually works really well in English. And like the Japanese term uses like enlightenment and things like that. So the idea of like eyes within, it's very clear. It's talking about this idea of a spiritual connection and understanding of all things of the universe in relation to yourself and the greater whole. So again, very like Buddhist concepts and things like that.
Yeah. Next one. Never understood if every Great One baby dies because of Flora. Maybe a video about possible reasons why Flora is gatekeeping humanity from becoming Great Ones so hard.
I don't know. So I think this is outright stated by Miyazaki though. While the Great One's children die, right? It's just about more powerful. He literally says in the interview, I think, in the Bloodborne interview for the guide, that it's about more powerful beings reproducing less and struggling more to have children. The more advanced you are, more advanced you are.
It's based on his observation about how like first world developed countries have like population crises, right? Where we're just not having kids at the same rate as say a poor country in Africa or something like that, right? So and the idea then is like he just sort of extrapolates to that to like the larger idea of evolution, where this idea of like, okay, so like when you get to humans, like you have a certain you're reproducing a thing, but then when you get to an even higher being than a human, you become so developed that's not just you're a first world country, you're in another plane of existence.
Because you're almost not even physical when you're a really higher Great One, so it makes sense that reproduction is obviously harder.
It's becoming the idea. Well, the idea is you're becoming closer and closer to a perfect being, so it becomes exponentially harder to become something that's more quote unquote perfect, right?
And it's kind of like the Apple Store. You know how Apple, they have like a rule where you need like 500,000 people within a certain vicinity to justify the economics of one Apple Store? It's kind of like that with the Great Ones, where it's like, for a human being to exist, you need certain things. You need like a certain environment, certain ecosystem, and for like it's sort of like building a pyramid, and a new thing always appears on top of the pyramid, and then like to add a Great One on top of the pyramid, you need like this massive just mass production of human beings becoming super enlightened.
You could say all the stars have to align.
Yeah, and it's just like getting logistically more and more complex to sustain the life of the higher evolved creatures. Because like a bug, it's easy to create a bug. Anyone can do it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Can you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
No, okay. Fair play. Very impressive.
Just gotta find a dough.
I'm like that Russian alchemist who tried to create children in
oh god.
It was horse manure or something.
Oh no. No, but the idea that you that the Great Ones and like Flora is trying to like stop us from like stop other Great Ones or whatever from having children. It's not really the case. Like Flora and all the Great Ones are all just like to the extent that the Great Ones are actually involved, like deeply invested in the events and goings on in Yharnam. It's so far as that they all want a kid. and they don't really even care if it's necessarily a kid of their own blood per se. They just want a kid. And the
it's
problem
just an
is that
overwhelming desire for
and
it, right? Yeah.
and the problem is that they're all competing for the same thing, and Yharnam seems to be the only place on the planet where they can get their actual thing because no one else is doing the blood ministration stuff, right? So, like you have essentially like Flora. Like Mensis are trying to contact Flora the same way that Lawrence ended up communing with Flora. Right, so and then they have Murgo to give to Flora, so that way they can get what they want, which is to become great ones or whatever, right? So that's how they understand it all works. And that the problem Lawrence had was that he didn't have a baby on hand, so he had to go into the dungeons to find the baby, right? But then the Murgo's wet nurse comes in instead and is the one who communes with Mensis. Murgo's wet nurse cuts in line, takes Murgo and gives them what they want, quote unquote, right? And then that's how we get into the plot we have now. So like basically the wet nurse snubs Flora before she can do so. So she shows up as the Red Moon. She's like, I'm coming, but then the wet nurse just cuts in line.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the idea. It's not like the Flora is trying to stop like the babies or whatever. Like the reason why Flora attacks us at the end,
it's because we
kill Gehrman.
Yeah, it was because we're supposed to be done with our job, and we're supposed to be going back home. That's it.
Gehrman was her leverage for Lawrence to give her a baby, and she's being held as collateral until Lawrence fully completes their transaction. So, in absence of Gehrman, she takes us, the one who killed Gehrman, as a replacement, and so then we essentially succeed Gehrman in his role, and that's sort of like the eldritch horror there.
Yeah.
But like, it has nothing to do with like the babies or whatever. Like Flora is like the same as all the other great ones, like Odin and the Wet Nurse and others. Like they just have their own ways of going about doing things. In Flora's case, it was okay. You want a whole hunter's dream thing, so you can all be immortal, so you can deal with all the terrible beasts that are going to come out of Ludwig's crew and all that stuff. It's like okay, fine. I'll create this dream dimension for you. But you beckoned me here with an umbilical cord. I want a full baby though. I don't just want a cord. So you better go bring me the baby here. I'm gonna hold him as collateral, and obviously they make that system work out with like Gehrman being like teacher and stuff, and the doll and all that, right? But it has nothing to do with like Flora trying to get in our way in any malicious way. Like she just wants a kid, man.
Huh.
She hit the wall.
With the wet nurse swiping the kid from Flora the way the wet nurse did, would you say the wet nurse has that dog in him?
Yeah, because he wins. It wins.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
GG's. I mean, listen. Like, she got her baby. She even ate her baby, and then we killed her and killed the baby with her.
All right.
GG's.
So the final theory. Gehrman can't be the Orphan of Kos because he serves the moon presence, and the orphan is presented as Kos's surrogate. The hook in the orphan's placenta really implies that he was literally used as a live bait to catch the Great One. Okay, I love that, but let's just keep going.
Hook?
Okay.
Most likely on Gehrman's orders, and since you need to be of certain blood to be a Great One surrogate, Gehrman's bloodline might have been enough. Okay, so just the idea of the hook being in the orphan's placenta, being like, oh yeah, we were just trying to bait a Great One. I love that idea. The rest of this, I'm not sure.
If they had the Great One baby, why would they need to? Like, it's like if they want the Great One baby. That was the whole point, is to look at the umbilical cords and like study the Great Ones as infants, so they can figure out how they could become infants themselves.
And I feel this is really early on still in their studies. I don't think they're maybe advanced enough to be carrying out
what's the hook thing supposed to be? Are they talking about
no? They're saying that is bait, is what they're saying.
Yeah.
But they talk as if there's an actual hook in the orphan.
It's in the placenta. It's the burial blade. So like it sounds like they're saying they had the orphan and they hooked him on the burial blade and they used that to fish in Kos.
As bait.
But that's a placenta connected to the baby's umbilical. Like we actually see we see how the weapon coils around the arm, goes into the arm, then comes out the back,
and
coils
also
around to the front into the belly button.
And Kos wasn't hooked onto land.
And
Kos
also
beached onto land.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't even beach.
Wasn't
even beach. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't even beach. Like the whole point with like Kos and the thing is that okay, so like they out there, they're massacring the people on land. Gehrman goes down to the beach during low tide. Kos comes onto land. They fight or whatever. They go through. They have their own boss fight, right? Gehrman visceral attacks Kos into the next universe or whatever, right? Like she's dead. Takes the baby.
That dog in him.
Rips the baby from the womb and leaves. And we have this from explicit dialogue. Like, the ambient dialogue in the area is actually, in the Japanese specifically, is talking about how mother has been killed, her baby taken. So, like, it's her baby that has been taken.
Yeah, the chanting of the women behind the door is basically just straight up say that the baby has been taken. So that's why I've always believed that the Orphan of Kos is never there, really. Whatever the baby was taken, dissected, brutalized for science.
Yeah, the whole point is that, like, Gehrman murders Kos, steals the baby from her womb, and leaves, and then that resentment and grudge is what becomes the source of the nightmare that they create this sort of, like, copy of the fishing Hamlet, but with all the residents resurrected, even though obviously their dead bodies are still there and stuff like all of it is this very, like, supernatural, surreal thing, but, like, it doesn't make sense, the idea that they have a baby and they're using it as bait to lure out the Great One, who again is already pregnant with said baby. Like,
it also suggests that they've got that the villagers have an existing relationship with Kos prior to prior to getting there. Whereas with that theory with Gehrman, that would suggest that they didn't, and the Bergenworth scholars are the ones that drew her in, when in fact Kos had an existing relationship with these villagers. In fact, their industry seems to be based around it, essentially.
And the only reason to have that relationship is for what we see at the end, which is that she becomes pregnant with child. She's trying to... She's using them to engineer an entity who can impregnate her, so that way she can have her own baby, just like all the other great ones. Right? Like, it's the same motivation for them all that we interact with. And, like, and then that ties into the whole idea that the healing church, we find the corpse that's getting, the guy with the butcher knife is, like, really going into that one corpse that we find that has the spy outfit. It's like, oh, okay, because you have these spies who are beggars who wander into town from the church, and they're sending in reports. It's like, oh, hey, we have word now that apparently the Great One...
They heard that there was a great one here, and this village was
they pass it on to Lawrence and company, and then Lawrence and
Correct,
Gehrman and go over and they massacre the village and they take the baby. Like it's all, like, we have all the evidence in game to tell us what's going on. It has nothing to do with them already having a baby in order to lure in a great one. Like, they want the baby because the baby is because they want to be great one infants themselves.
And I think
they need to figure out how to get them.
It's a crueler story if the way it is. They've got this almost nice symbiotic relationship, cosmic and warped as it is. And these cold scientists come in, butcher everyone, scrape the inside of their skulls looking for eyes, etc. Walk down to the beach.
It's all part of research.
It's brutal. So I think my main issue with it is just that there's clearly an existing relationship between Kos and this village, and it's implied that word got back to Bergenworth, and Bergenworth came in.
And we've already talked about the Gehrman thing, and on the idea of, like, it not being is Gehrman for the Orphan of Kos boss. So
I do love the idea of the burial blade being used and, like, stabbed into the orphan, like, into the child, to, like, try to fish out more great ones. I think that's a really vile idea. But
it could be fan art of, like, Gehrman hunting with his burial blade on the line.
Oh yeah,
totally. Sitting on the side, just.
Go where that grave is, right? That overlooks.
Yeah, it overlooks the beach.
The grave Maria set up. Like, just have it where, like, Gehrman is, like, sitting there while Maria is setting up the grave.
And every now and then, when you're in the DLC, when you're in just in Yharnam in the DLC, if you look up, you can just see, like, the Orphan of Kos dangling on the line.
Hanging on the line.
Morbid stuff.
We're terrible people.
Hey, nobody's a good person 2 hours into a recording.
Bloodborne definitely seems like a game that can be rife with theory crafting, though, just because it is the nature of, like, it's dreams and reality.
We've discussed this. We've discussed this before. I think it's the least concrete game. I think. Yeah. IMO. It definitely is.
Like, just the way of, like, having the dreams and stuff just makes it super easy for someone to, like, imagine, like, oh no, actually this is a dream, and actually we do this, and all of this is surreal and stuff like that.
Exactly. But it's great for theories, though. Great for theories.
But we see. But I think the thing is, like, even though it's conducive to that, I don't think it changes the calculus, because I think maybe people would make the same cases and say, like, a Dark Souls or a Demon Souls or Elden Ring, right? So I don't think it's the nature of the game per se. I just think it's something where it's like, okay, it's most supportive to those kinds of ideas and modes of theory crafting.
Yeah, for sure. But by the nature of its own story, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see how that could change with, like, say, Elden Ring and stuff, because of, again, I'm presuming it's going to be, we enter Miquella's dreamscape, and most of the lore is going to focus around the dreams and the spirit worlds and stuff like that, and all that supernatural jazz. So, like, we might be able to see some similar stuff. Like, I've always, my position on the DLC, when it eventually comes out, because it's totally not a myth, is that
Good one.
is that the, well, I'm only expecting stuff on Miquella and the dreams and spirit world stuff, but I am willing to be surprised and see, like, so many other things that Elden Ring could expand upon being, like, formed into that game in the same way that the Hunter's Nightmare sort of cobbles together so much extra stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the DLC is probably just going to be about magic paint or something, but we'll see. We'll see.
Will it be of the yellow variety, or do you think they'll get creative and start going, like, blue?
Oh, don't, Loki, please. We managed to avoid it.
This video is coming out in like a month or something. This discourse will probably be dead by then.
Yellow paint, man.
Listen.
No, I'm done listening. I'm done listening about it. No.
Fine. Anyways, then, since we're not talking yellow paint, and we're not, guys, do you wanna give some plugs?
Yep. Go to SmoughTown on YouTube. Go to YouTube. SmoughTown. SmoughTown YouTube.
Wow,
And
that's easy to find. Wow, just go to YouTube and type in SmoughTown and you'll be
type in
there.
SmoughTown and
There might have a few vids with like 1 million views you might see. That's from another guy. It's totally not from our SmoughTown.
yeah. No, it's definitely
don't
not.
get confused.
Yeah, and if you like Elden Ring lore and Souls lore, check it out.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on LokiSouls.com, as I said earlier, with my shameless plug, and I'll shamelessly plug again, LokiSouls.com. You can also, of course, find me on YouTube as Loki_DS, Loki_DS, that is. And yeah, I like to talk about the lore. I like to have very detailed blog posts on this stuff. I also am a writer who has actually published 2 books on From Software games. One is, of course, Abyssal Archive, covering the entirety of the original Dark Souls, as well as another one on Demon Souls called, fittingly, Demonic Archive. So, hey, you may want to check that out.
They're really good. They're really good.
Thank you.
And thank you, dear listener, for listening to Theory Talk. Nailed it.
Wow.
And for all your amazing theories.
And for all of your amazing theories. I also said that.
Yes.
It was a fun discussion.
Yeah.
If I didn't read your theory, I probably it was a bad theory.
We should do it for the other series, the other games as well.
Oh, that'd be so nice.
It was quite fun.
yeah,
It was quite fun. Yeah, it was quite fun.
We could
Oh,
do
I'd love to go over wacky Dark Souls theories too.
Yeah, me too. That'd be fun.
Dark Souls 2 theories.
Oh no, why? No, I regret! Pull back!
Loki, have you considered that perhaps Dark Souls 2 is convoluted?
Oh no, let's not get into this discussion right now. This is my yellow paint.
Anyways, yeah. Thanks everybody for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Later!